Mandla has explained, it's clear that Mr. Mdletshe was kept for a period that there must be a transition between his pensionable age and for him to train someone who will take over from him. When the office of the Premier has done that decision, it will be impossible for the Premier's office to keep two praise singers while there must be one praise singer. Then, of course, that's why they wrote the contract in such a way that at a time when that happens, the contract can be terminated. Mr. Mdletshe worked for the department, for the provincial government until she reached 65 years. He was paid all the benefits. Now, it was going to be impossible. It's like keeping two presidents for one country.
Yes, I don't have too much time, but can you describe the relationship now between the Zulu monarch and the provincial government? Is there tensions?
No, there are not tensions. There are not tensions. Let me tell you what is very painful about the provincial government of KwaZulu-Natal. Can I tell you this? It is being attacked by a political party using the Zulu kingdom for its own narrow, selfish ends. I can tell you now.
Which political party are you talking about?
The ISP. I can tell you now, no king in South Africa gets the support that the Zulu monarch gets from the provincial government of KwaZulu-Natal.
All right. That's where I got to leave it. Bekim Tolo, the ANC's KZN Provincial Secretary. Unfortunately, we run out of time completely. From the team this morning, Tracy Boomga, Tizwanga Manashe, and Marumo Kakana. Senior producer Ronald Perry, technical producer Sia Daniel, executive producer Vutsila Kota. I'm Elvis Preston. We'll see you tomorrow morning, same time, same place. Ciao for now. Arrivederci.
In our top stories, Concord issues directions in IEC appeal over Zuma's MK candidacy, and Joburg Water urges residents to use water wisely. Good morning. We start with election news. The Constitutional Court has issued directions in the IEC's bid to appeal the Electoral Court order that paved the way for former President Jacob Zuma to remain on the newly formed Umkhonto weSizwe Party's candidate list ahead of the May 2024 polls. The Apex Court has directed respondents that are opposing the application to file answering affidavits on or before tomorrow, adding that further directions may be issued. Kenny Mapanga reports.
In papers seen by SABC News, the IEC is appealing to the Constitutional Court, contending that the Commission received 22 objections to former President Zuma's eligibility to stand for the election and uphold 2 of those objections. The IEC, which is standing by its March decision, is asking for an urgent hearing, contending that it is in the public interest and the interest of justice for there to be finality on Zuma's eligibility before any votes are cast, to avoid the election and its outcome being tainted if the IEC's appeal succeeds.
The 2 learners from the Davidton Skills School east of Johannesburg who drowned in the Hinops River last week will be buried today. 17-year-old Sibusiso Sibiya and 15-year-old Siphamandla Peterson drowned during a discipline camp at Rock Falls Adventure Ranch in Centurion. Gauteng Education MEC Matome Chilwane says the trip was not sanctioned by his department. Spokesperson for the department, Steve Mabona.
These are the 2 Davidton Skills School learners who drowned during a discipline camp in Tshwane. The funeral will be a joint one, which will commence around 8 o'clock in the morning at Rabasutu Community Hall in Tembisa.
Tributes continue to pour in for the former Tshwane Mayor Murunwa Makwarela, who died yesterday. City of Johannesburg Council Speaker Margaret Arnolds has expressed shock over Makwarela's passing. The former City of Tshwane Speaker of Council was appointed mayor in February last year. However, his tenure was short-lived. His appointment was followed by controversy that he had been declared insolvent in 2016, making him ineligible to wear the mayoral chain. At the time of his death, Makwarela was facing criminal charges at the Pretoria Commercial Crimes Court. City of Joburg spokesperson for the Speaker of Council, Vusi Gumbi.
The Speaker of Council in the city of Johannesburg, Councillor Margaret Arnold, sends her deepest condolences to the Makwarela family, his former colleagues at the Tshwane City Council and political fraternity. This is indeed a great loss. May all those who knew, loved and worked with the former Speaker and Mayor of the city of Tshwane be comforted during this difficult time.
Johannesburg Waters urge residents in the west of Johannesburg to use water wisely. This comes after it identified a high rate of water consumption in areas supplied by Doornkop North Meter, including Doornkop, Tsepisong, Slovoville and Matolesville. Johannesburg Water spokesperson Nombuso Shabalala says the high consumption rate is due to the illegal connections and on property leaks, mostly in the informal settlements.
The high consumption is mainly due to illegal connections and on-property leaks, especially within the informal settlements. The ongoing high consumption has a negative impact on other suburbs in these supply zones, including Dobsonville and Protea Glen.
And finally, the Department of International Relations says it's appalled by the recent grim discovery of a mass grave containing the remains of more than 200 Palestinian civilians at the Nasser hospital complex in Gaza. In a statement, DIRCO says the latest development comes after the discovery of mass graves at the Al-Shifa hospital to the north of the enclave. As Sherwin Bryce Peace reports, the South African government says these findings call for immediate investigations to ensure justice and accountability.
South Africa says the lack of accountability by Israel is increasingly clear and called on the international community to act to bring the perpetrators to justice and ensure accountability for the victims and their families. It further warned that the evidence of mass killings of civilians point to war crimes under the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court.
Recapping the top story, the Constitutional Court has issued directions in the IEC's bid to appeal the electoral court order that paved the way for former President Jacob Zuma to remain on the newly formed Umkhonto weSizwe Party's candidate list ahead of the May 2024 polls. For SFM News, I am Anne Musa.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, Mamelodi Sundowns on the brink of making history with a 7th consecutive league title, while Arsenal, they demolished Chelsea with a 5-0 victory. Stay tuned. We'll bring you the details just before 6:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
And from the traffic desk this morning, if you're leaving Pretoria on your way to the airport after the roadworks at Clayville, there is a crash blocking 2 lanes on the left between Olifantsfontein and the R25 Busfontein exit. Watch the traffic slowing into that scene. And a pedestrian knockdown on Durban's N2 southbound just after Spaghetti Junction through towards the Booth Road Bridge area. So again, just watch for slowing traffic rather than a heavy backlog. Pietermaritzburg up to Hilton looking a little bit sluggish this morning. There may be some roadworks still in place there, and very heavy mist around the Harrismith and surrounding areas. Harrismith, Swinburne, down to Van Rynens. We can see traffic being held up on that route this morning, and that gives you an indication of how heavy and thick that mist and fog is. Extra care and caution required there. And just an update from Cape Town, Baden-Powell Drive is open this morning through Khayelitsha. Mitchell's Plain, no reports of any protest. Road open and flowing both directions. I'm Rob Byrne. SAFM Sunrise starts now.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
7 minutes after 6, good morning, welcome to SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Well, after a period in which I think the news has been a little sort of quieter than I expected at this phase in an election, things seem to be picking up a little bit. And I was listening very closely to the conversations Elvis was having just a few moments ago about the situation in KwaZulu-Natal, and how often have we said that it is the situation in KwaZulu-Natal that you need to kind of watch in these elections for various reasons. Well, a lot of anger, it would appear, from the Zulu royal family, and people there are furious at how a senior person was removed or have their employment terminated, is the phrase that they're using in the KwaZulu-Natal provincial government, and the person worked as a cultural advisor or praise singer, different titles for the person. And as a result, they're very angry. You heard the KwaZulu-Natal provincial government, Bongi Gwala, someone who you should know here on SAFM, FM, talking a little bit about it as well. And then I think what surprised me was the phrase used by Bheki Mtolo, the Provincial Secretary of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal, referring to Thulasizwe Buthelezi, the traditional Prime Minister to the Zulu Kingdom, as a scandalous man. Just so you know, about an hour from now, you'll hear the response from Thulasizwe Buthelezi to that. We'll give him a chance to respond to that, and I'll put that quote directly to him so he gets a chance to respond to it directly. And of course, this is all not really supposed to be caught up with politics, but kind of is, because Buthelezi is from the IFP. The KZN administration currently is in the hands of the ANC, and so we have all of these sort of complicated dynamics, often among people who know each other really well, by the way. So, it's one of these quite complicated political things that we're watching very, very closely, keeping a very close eye on that situation. I must tell you, and this is one of the things I don't really like talking about because it can be a bit boring and a bit technical, but there's now more and more indications that we are not going to get an interest rate cut this year. And this is based on what the Reserve Bank put out yesterday in their monetary policy review. They put out big documents. Also, if you look at what's happening in the rest of the world, the US Federal Reserve possibly not cutting this year. And then if you look at where inflation is, and we know that our Reserve Bank wants inflation at what's called the midpoint. They want it at 4.5%, and it's currently between 5 and 6%. And we know also that, in fact, interest rates have a big impact on you. I was talking to an economist yesterday, very briefly, who was telling me how angry he is and frustrated he is at the Reserve Bank's current decisions. I know there's strong arguments from the bank and why it's making the decisions that it is. We're actually looking at a mediated conversation. We're going to plan it for today, but unfortunately one of the people we really wanted to speak to wasn't available. So we're looking at sort of Monday or Tuesday next week, but just a sort of reminder about interest rates. But look, it's not all bad news. We're on day 28 of no load shedding. In fact, overnight, Khosienso Ramakopa, the electricity minister, his office got in touch and said they're very happy to speak to you this morning, so we'll hear from them as well. One of the key questions is around whether the open cycle gas turbines are sort of running harder than they should be to keep the lights on or not. Is it costing us a lot of money in diesel? It's also because, though, and everybody knows this, it's because there are 5,000 megawatts of electricity on the grid that wasn't there before, that's being generated privately by companies and by private homeowners. And it makes a huge difference, it makes a massive difference. It's 5 stages of load shedding. When the sun is shining, people have batteries and things, and so that makes a big difference as well. And without that, I think we would still be in trouble. I suspect, again, that something's brewing in eThekwini. I know, KZN, there we are. And it seems, and this was a News 24 report, the council wants to spend 25 million rand on what they call security vehicles. Not entirely saying for whom, but yeah, I think the suspicion is, if I can call it a suspicion, is that it would be for councillors, the mayor, people like that. There's so many service delivery problems in eThekwini at the moment around water, around electricity, other issues. And so people really looking at that very closely. Interestingly, it seems the Freedom Front Plus Council voted in favour of this. The EFF and the DA voted together against this measure. I thought that was interesting. There's an interesting story developing in Buffalo City as well. The mayor there for the ANC, Princess Faku, she went to court to stop a group of people who wanted to attend a community meeting with her. They wanted to speak to her directly. She said they wanted to disrupt the event. And yesterday, the Eastern Cape Premier, Oscar Mabuyane, said that she should not have gone to court to do that. She did win the case. There was an interdict granted. But he was saying she shouldn't have done that. It was the wrong thing. And that she should have resolved it in some other way. And people have a right to speak to her directly. And I think that must be true. I'm kind of in his camp on this one. I don't know what it says about a mayor who goes to court to stop people speaking to you directly. And then Gerrie Fourie, who's the CEO of Capitec, I don't think he and I have spoken directly, but he made an interesting comment yesterday about debt counselling. And he says that people are being placed in debt review sort of too early, and it limits them, and that actually it shouldn't be like that. So I wondered if that maybe had happened to you, or happened to someone you know, if you're sort of put in debt review when actually it wasn't the best option, and what that process is like. Maybe you could tell us a little bit of a story there. The number 086 000 2032, SMS 41391. You tweet SFM Radio and at Stephen Grootes. You send your WhatsApp voice notes to 0614 104 107. Good morning, good to have you along. It's 13 minutes after 6.
The Daily News Diary on SAFM.
And Musa, good morning. I made the point that I think the news agenda is beginning to get going again.
It definitely is, Stephen. It definitely is. Good morning to you.
Good morning. What's coming up this morning?
Well, as tributes continue to pour in for the former Tshwane mayor who died yesterday, we know that he was facing criminal charges. Looking at reaction from the NPA on that, with the charges being struck from the court roll. This year marks 20 years also since the launch of the extended public works program, and President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to unveil millions of work opportunities for the program in the next 5 years. The event will be taking place at the Buffalo City Stadium. The ANC in Gauteng expected to outline its campaign as it opted not to launch a provincial manifesto, but rather to work the ground in preparation for the Siyangoba rally that's taking place next month. And in court cases, the investigating officer in the Senzo case, Sergeant Batu Mukhola, is expected back on the stand this morning in the High Court in Pretoria. We know that 5 men are on trial in the High Court for the murder of the Bafana Bafana captain Senzo Mehiwa. And yesterday, Mukhola was asked why a warrant of arrest had not been issued to the singer Kelly Khumalo. And we know that Kelly Khumalo is the former girlfriend of the slain soccer captain.
Isn't it the question that just continues to hang over the trial? You just can't get away from it.
It does. It is. And remember this case, the 3 police officers and 5 civilians that were accused of involvement in a cash-in-transit case in Malelane last year, they did not get away with a whole lot of money. They are expected to appear in court today, and they are facing charges of attempted murder, armed robbery, illegal possession of stolen property, as well as conspiracy to commit a crime. And then just lastly, a disgruntled group of grant recipients are expected to march to the Limpopo Premier Stan Matabata's office, and they are demanding that SASSA and Postbank rescind the decision to close all physical cash payment points from the beginning.
I was beginning to wonder if there was going to be a move against this, because it seemed to happen almost too easily, too quietly. The idea that, the post office would stop cash payments in that way.
Yeah, and also for those disgruntled recipients in Limpopo, they are complaining about the long distances they have to travel, so it's quite difficult for those in the rural communities that have no access to ATMs.
Indeed. And Musa, thank you very much. You'll be listening on the radio 16 minutes now after 6 o'clock.
Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
Let's have a look at your weather around the country this morning. Tshwane, fine, 16 and 30. Johannesburg, fine, 15 and 28. Vereeniging, fine, 13 and 28. Bombela, partly cloudy, morning drizzle, 18 and 28. Polokwane, fine, 14 and 28. Mahikeng, fine, 15 and 32. Vryburg, fine, 11 and 32. Mangaung, fine, 8 and 29. Kimberley, fine, 12 and 31. Uppington, fine, 15 and 35. Cape Town, cloudy, fog patches in the morning and evening, partly cloudy in the afternoon, a light and variable wind, 14 and 21. George, cloudy, fog in the morning, a light and variable wind, 14 and 20. Gqeberha, early morning and evening fog, otherwise fine, a light southwesterly wind, 16 and 22. East London, early morning and evening fog, otherwise fine, a light southerly wind, 18 and 24. eThekwini, partly cloudy, a moderate to fresh easterly wind, 22 and 27. Richards Bay, partly cloudy, a moderate to fresh easterly wind, 22 and 29. And Pietermaritzburg, morning fog patches, otherwise partly cloudy, 17 and 28.
For 120 years, Rhodes University has shaped history. From Sir George Corey's pioneering 62 conversations capturing the early history of the Eastern Cape, to the first email to be sent in South Africa, and now leading the way in nanotechnology. Rhodes University is more than an educational institution. We are a legacy in motion. Be part of the evolving legacy. Rhodes University, where leaders learn.
And we will buy 500 cars, and we will buy 500 more. Just to be the one who buys your car, will come to you and offer more. We buy cars, we buy cars. We buy cars, we buy cars.
We buy cars the easiest way to sell your car by far.
So, Umpo was busy on my manifestation. I told him before manifesting, make money first. When you use your NetBank Amex card, you earn up to 2% unlimited cashback and 25 cents back per litre of fuel at BP with Greenbacks any day.
And even more on Fridays because
Thank Greenbacks it's Friday.
Sure thing. Get rewarded with Greenbacks. Join NetBank today. See money differently. NetBank. We're an authorized FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
be part of the 17th Annual SA Sport Awards under the theme Celebrating 30 Years of Freedom Through Sporting Excellence, with great prizes to be won every week. All you have to do is SMS A, B, C, D, or E to 32020 to vote for your favorite People's Choice Nominee of the Year. SMS is charged at R1.50. Free SMSs do not apply. The nominees are A. Eben Etzebeth, B. Gardestein, C. Siamtanda Siya Kolisi, D. Percy Tau, E. Kirsten Neuschafer. SMS A, B, C, D, or E to 32020. Voting line closes at 9 p.m. on the 5th of May 2024. T's and C's apply. For more information, visit dsac.gov.za. Catch the SA Sport Awards on Sunday, 5th of May on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC 1 at 8 p.m. Proudly brought to you by the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture. SABC Sport is the official broadcaster of the SA Sport Awards. Hashtag #IsInJustAGame. Hashtag SASA 17th edition.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
19 minutes after 6, good morning. In the UK, the British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's been celebrating a decision by the country's parliament to continue with the policy or to move forward with it. A policy that will see people who cross the channel from Europe to the UK in boats to claim asylum being flown to Rwanda and being housed there. At the moment, Rwanda is also accused of supporting the M23 rebel movement, which our soldiers are fighting against in their deployment in the DRC. Just 3 weeks ago, President Cyril Ramaphosa met with the Rwandan President Paul Kagame at the commemoration of the Rwandan genocide 30 years ago. We have Rwanda at the centre of several developments at the moment. Musa Mdunga is a political analyst based at the University of Dundee in the UK. Musa, good morning. I appreciate you getting up an hour or 2 hours earlier than normal for us.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for having me. Good morning to you and to your listeners.
There's strange things happening here. More people are asking questions about Rwanda's human rights record. Our soldiers are fighting against people we believe to be backed by Rwanda. Britain is going ahead with this agreement to send people to Rwanda. I mean, it's a very strange situation.
Well, certainly, Stephen, it is. But, we would have to separate things here. Each country gets to decide how it would run its international affairs in the name of its national interest. And so the United Kingdom's choice of Rwanda certainly stems from that. The country does have a history of supporting, of having similar deals with other countries. In fact, it had a similar deal with Israel as well, but which also fell on the wayside. In fact, the failure of Rwanda to implement that deal is one of the red flags that were even raised by UK courts last year, as well as the European Court of Justice. That the fact that you're dealing with a country that has a history or a precedence of not meeting its promises. And so there was a sense that Rwanda would not be the kind of country to uphold human rights for asylum seekers. And this has been at the center of this dispute.
It also gives the Rwandan government credibility. I mean, at a time when people question its human rights record, the British government's deal helps Rwanda. I mean, there's a reason why Rwanda is so keen on it.
Certainly, it does. It certainly help Rwanda's soft power grow, and the perception that it is a human rights promoter and protector. And certainly for the United Kingdom, given that it is a democracy, an active democracy, such a cosign by such a country strengthens Kagame's own credibility in international affairs and his reputation at home as well. So certainly on both sides, you can see the benefit for this particular deal, even for Rishi Sunak, who's facing pressure from his Conservative Party members to deal with this influx of asylum seekers in the UK.
How popular is this policy in the UK? Is it popular only in the Conservative Party, or is it popular with voters ahead of an election?
Well, it seems like the issue of migration is a very important issue, but particularly this one, there is a sense in the United Kingdom that this has split the country. Particularly when we think about divisions between the young and the old in terms of this topic. Young people favoring that integration, favoring a greater mix of people, with older generation favoring stricter migration policies and asylum-seeking policies. So there's certainly a division here, but I would say where that division is most important is within the Conservative Party, especially going towards the next elections and a potential leadership challenge. The fact that you have the likes of Liz Truss all of a sudden doing media rounds is very interesting and points towards a potential leadership challenge this year, if not next year.
And then we still, if I understand it correctly, Sunak has promised a general election this year. From what we can see, the Labour Party and Sir Keir Starmer, their leader, he's a former head of the Crown Prosecution Service, their equivalent of the NPA. It would seem that the Labour Party is very much going to be the next government.
Certainly, yes, Stephen. I mean, all the polls, certainly indicate that, the Conservatives are certainly going to lose this election. The question is whether they will lose it according to the 1997 margins that saw Tony Blair and that new Labour red wave come in, or will it be similar to that 1987 Margaret Thatcher victory? So it will be very interesting to see where this goes. But certainly, from where I'm sitting and where many analysts are sitting, look, it's as good as done. And particularly because the Conservative Party face a challenge on the right by the Reform Party that will steal votes. And if you know about the first past the post system here, all you need is to get the most votes. So this favors Labour and definitely disadvantages the Conservative Party.
And there was a time when everything in the UK in their politics was about Brexit. In the end, they took the decision to leave the European Union. How do people feel about that now?
Brexit has become unpopular, Stephen. If you speak to most British people, some polls indicate about 70% of the population would favor a return to the EU, or at least a single market agreement here. And because the failure that Brexit has been in terms of the structure of the United Kingdom's economy, it is the least competitive economy in the G7. It is facing some of the biggest cost of living crises in Europe. And, besides Germany, it really is not performing well in terms of advanced economy. So for many Britons, the move towards Brexit has been very, very negative. And if British people had their way, they would probably want a second referendum on the issue. But here's the problem. Labour have not indicated any desire to return to the EU question, maybe because they're thinking the question of Europe has really burned so many leaders, from Thatcher all the way to David Cameron. That's something that they would not want to touch anymore.
Musum Dungep, thank you very much indeed. Political analyst based at the University of Dundee in the UK. Really appreciate it. 27 minutes after 6.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning.
Good morning.
Well, Sundowns.
Well, 7 wonders of Sundowns. They are edging closer to their 7th DStv Premiership title. They had a tense, though, 2-1 victory over Sekhukhune United. Took place at Loftus Versfeld last night. The Kleurklop Giants have now opened up a 13-point gap at the top of the pile and need 2 more wins to secure that 7th successive league title. But here's their coach, Rulani Mokoena.
I think what we did today was nothing short of a miracle, because without our strong mentality and character, we don't win this game. Where the team could have collapsed while also struggling for legs, but we dug deep, and I'm very proud of them because I think today we showed the strength of a chameleon. We absorbed pressure and we suffered when we needed to.
Another match last night saw Arsenal. They provided a major statement about their title credentials, thrashing Chelsea 5-0 at the Emirates Stadium to move 3 points clear at the top of the Premier League table. In another match, Leicester hammered Southampton 5-0 to move within 1 point of promotion back to the Premier League. And in the meantime, Aston Villa manager Unai Emery extending his contract until 2027. Emery has done an impressive job at Villa Park, guiding the club from a relegation fight when he took over from Steven Gerrard in November 2022 to the brink of Champions League qualification. The Birmingham club are fourth in the Premier League table, 6 points ahead of fifth place Tottenham, who have 2 games in hand. Rugby news: Ulster have confirmed that the Springbok prop Stephen Kittoff will return to South Africa after suffering a season-ending knee injury. Now, he suffered the injury during Ulster's Challenge Cup quarterfinal against Claremont, where he played 55 minutes before being substituted. The 2-time World Cup winner will return to South Africa this week to consult with a knee specialist over a treatment plan, and it's unclear whether he'll recover in time for the Springboks Test series against the Six Nations champions Ireland, and that's happening in July. And finally, tennis. The world number 2, Yannick Sinner, admitting that he's never played very well at the Madrid Open, as the Italian will start as the top seed for the first time in a Masters 1000. The Italian will face countryman Lorenzo Sonego. He's failed to reach his best level in this tournament and has never reached more than second round in his last 2 previous participations. Sinner has already won 3 tournaments in 2024 so far. Here he is ahead of the Madrid Open.
Yeah, for sure it's great, but it doesn't change anything, to be honest. I'm just happy to be here. I never played really well here, so it's going to be interesting to see how I can handle this year, the situation. But I'm very excited to be back on court, trying to compete with whatever I have, and then we'll see what the outcome is.
We'll bring you more sport. Top of the hour, I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. Good morning. You're with SFM. In the next half an hour, more about PhD, honorary PhDs, honorary doctorates, and when you do really get one and when you don't. That to come. Just gone 6:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, the DA leader John Steenhuisen has reiterated the need for change during his meeting with party supporters at the Bloemfontein City Hall during the DA's Rescue South Africa tour last night. The Constitutional Court has issued directions in the IEC's bid to appeal the electoral court order that paved the way for former President Jacob Zuma to remain on the newly formed Umkhonto we Sizwe party's candidate list ahead of the May 2024 polls. And the Department of International Relations says it's appalled by the recent grim discovery of a mass grave containing the remains of more than 200 Palestinian civilians at the Nasir Hospital complex in Gaza. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Well, it's a heavy backlog into Pretoria. Still no traffic lights on Eskia and Pathlali at WFN Como. They've been an issue this week, and that traffic on Eskia is backlogging through the Marabastad area and all jammed up into Pretoria CBD. Collision on the R21 just after the roadworks at Clayville between Olifantsfontein and the Bopsfontein exit. If you're on your way to the airport, watch for some delays there. Durban, a nasty collision involving a pedestrian into southbound between Spaghetti Junction and the M7. Multiple lanes are closed, and there is some backlogging going on. If you're coming through Getty Road, wanting to get through Spaghetti Junction on your way down towards the Bluff exit, just watch for slowing traffic there. Hunt Stepman Highway is quite a backlog up towards Wiltshire Road. If you're coming from Clarvater through towards Pinetown, that's a busy one this morning. Cape Town Highway is busy, but no major obstructions at this hour. Just a slow inbound on the N1 from around sort of Belleville, Durban Road territory. It's all jammed up through to Sable Road. M7 looks like an issue coming out of Mitchell's Plain. There's delays as you move up towards Klipfontein Road. So on your way through towards the N2, that's an unusual backlog. And the R40 north of Bushbuck Ridge, Castile area remains subject to protest action. If you're moving between Acorn Hook and Bushbuck Ridge, expect some possible delays and diversions on and off that R40 route. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
Ntaoleng Lechela, good morning.
Morning, Stephen. How are you doing?
I'm well, thanks. How are the markets this morning?
Well, markets globally have performed quite well this week. US stocks ending a second session in the green as strong earnings reports outweighed high interest rate concerns. We also saw green screens back at home, with the all share extending its gains, ending the day 0.63% higher, with local traders digesting mixed updates from Anglo American and Sasol, while Capitec surprised to the upside, delivering stellar numbers. Over in Asia, Tokyo's Nikkei led gains as stocks in the region rose across the board following positive momentum seen in the US and in Europe. The positivity has finally somewhat filtered through to the local currency, with the rand trading slightly stronger at 19.10 to the dollar.
And Spotify, the cost-cutting initiatives are bearing fruit.
Yeah, so after a year of cost-cutting and streamlining efforts, Spotify has kicked off 2024 on a stronger note. In the first quarter, the audio streaming company beat analysts' top line and bottom line expectations. The group raised prices to boost revenue and experimented with different subscription plans. Now, many of these initiatives came after activist investor Value Act joined and bought a stake in the company. Now that there's somewhat of an improvement, Spotify says it'll spend more on marketing and initiatives to up its monthly users. This comes after monthly active users only increased by 19%, missing analyst expectations. However, markets were impressed with the numbers, with the share price ending the day up 11.4%.
And then the owner of Gucci, Kering, say it's a downbeat first quarter performance.
Now that luxury market has been taking a lot of strain. Last week we spoke about LVMH. That group managed to eke out some growth, but Gucci owner Kering is struggling. In the first quarter, the firm reported an 11% decline in revenue, and it's pointed to tough macroeconomic conditions, weak traffic weighing on retail, as well as forex headwinds. Now the company's revenue decline was also impacted by revenue for its Gucci brand, which fell by 18%. Kering doesn't expect things to get better anytime soon, as those macroeconomic conditions remain the same. And so it's warning of a 40 to 45% decline in operating income in the first half of the year when compared to the first half of 2023.
Intaling Chelap, thanks very much indeed. Back in an hour, more business news through the day here on SAFM.
Africa Update on SAFM Sunrise, a continental overview of current African affairs.
Rust Advocate Sipho Mantula, good morning.
Steve, over refreshing morning and Jumbo Africa to the listeners.
In Senegal, the new leader there, Bassirou Diomaye Faye, calling for a rethink of their relationship with the EU.
Stephen, remember that was one of his reforms as he was engaging during his electioneering as a presidential candidate in Senegal. Now, what has appeared, Stephen, was that the European Council President Charles Michel was in Senegal. Now, in their engagement, he said that the relationship between Senegal and Europe has been dense, multifaceted, but now they need to rethink, renovate this partnership and look at what he said, innovative, dynamic ways. Remember that the main issue, Stephen, will be around the oil and the gas contracts, and the fishing agreements that they have signed with the EU. How are they going to review them so that it can benefit the Senegal's economy? That's what Faye is engaging the EU with SG by saying that it is important that both Senegal and the European Union, they are able to equally benefit from these contracts.
And then in Togo, they've got their legislative and regional elections in a few days. There are a larger number of women than in the past.
That's quite true, Stephen. Others are saying they are defying the traditional norms and expectations. Out of 2,348 validated candidates for the parliamentary elections, Stephen, we have 593 women who are running for the parliament, just for 113 seats up for grabs. And when you look at the regional level, we have 438 women who are contesting for the regional elections. Those are the stats that were shared by the Independent National Electoral Commission of Togo. Interestingly, Stephen, Togo has been going through a lot, but that shows that there are parliamentary elections in the coming 5 days. It will make sense when you have more women contesting for power, and as well as balancing what has been happening in that country. More so, we have been talking about their constitutional reform and their president trying to extend his power until 2033.
And then the situation regarding Rwanda and the UK, we were talking about that a little while ago. People talking about what's actually happening in Rwanda.
Stephen, but what is important also is what has come out from the asylum seekers' mind and voices in Britain, that they have expressed fear now and concern after the Parliament of Britain passed this bill now that they will allow some migrants now to be sent to Rwanda. Now, they are raising this issue, Stephen, because they are the ones who are saying they did not expect, even if they are exiled or they are having asylum, their space in Britain, they will ever be taken to Rwanda, considering what has been happening in Rwanda. But also, Stephen, look at the numbers now. As we are talking, this channel wave that people have been going through, even just yesterday, 5 people have died so far. So we have people who are still going to Europe, and at the same time, it's difficult. How do you maintain them? And that's where you have this cry also coming from asylum seekers, either from Middle East, Africa, and Asia, lamenting about Rwanda so far.
And then in Haiti, the diaspora, real problems there. Hospitals and clinics, they don't have equipment or medication. And these gangs seem to be running the show.
Stephen, we don't know why Barbecue is keeping this place like this. This gang leader who has now caused what we call a health emergency now in Haiti now, that the health system, when you look at hospitals and clinics, they say the life-saving medication and equipment is dwindling because of these gangsters, Stephen. We have closed even the main international airport as early as last month. And now you feel that the Haiti's health system has been fragile, is now nearing to total collapse. And this, the only hospital that is operating, Stephen, is the one that is a Peace University hospital that is outside university. That's the only one that is still even treating patients with gunshot wound. And that is a concern for the UN. That's a concern also, Stephen, for the Kenyan mission that has to be in Haiti, how to restore the health system in that island.
And then in our archives, it was an important day, 24th of April, 1993.
Stephen, I thought, let me look back at 31 years ago, where many people will remember Oliver Reginald Tambo, who passed away from heart attack, Stephen, honored with a state funeral, where in his funeral he wrote these words that that was written by him, but it was read at his funeral, that it is our responsibility to break down the barriers of division and create a country where there will be neither whites nor blacks, just South Africans, free and united in diversity. Very important also, Stephen, when you look at in 1954, Oliver Tambo was elected as the Secretary General of the ANC, also receiving the banning order from the state during that time. And in 1993, Stephen, before his passing in April, he was opening an international conference that was chaired by former President Thabo Mbeki, where he thanked the foreign dignitaries and representatives and the anti-apartheid movements about their contribution in helping to end apartheid. So it is important when you look at our 30 years, Stephen, we look also at towards the 30 years towards 1994, what was the contribution of all liberation movements in this country. Asante Sana SG, as was still leading the conversation, SAFM, observing the Freedom Month.
Ras Advocate Sipho Mantula, thank you very much. 19 minutes to 7.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
That's the number. John and Rudaport will be with you in just a moment. I talked earlier a little bit about the debt review process. The CEO of Capitec saying people are being pushed into it too early. Voice notes coming through on that this morning.
Good morning, Stephen and SFM listeners. This is Anonymous from Soweto. I just want to also share my experience with the debt review. Hey, they put you there. The next thing, for you to get out from that, you need to pay a lot of money for them to remove you on debt review. Although you might not have debt, like they keep you there for a long time without removing your name until you pay a certain fee they require. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, Anonymous. All right, anyone else had that experience with the debt review process? I thought it was interesting that the CEO of a bank says people are being pushed into it too early. John on the line from Rudaport. John, hi, good morning.
Good morning, Steve. How are you?
Yeah, I'm well. Go for it.
Okay. I was listening to the Kim Kolo this morning.
Yes.
On,
It's quite a comment, eh? He said that the prime minister, the traditional prime minister to the Zulu kingdom, was a scandalous man.
Yes. So I'm wondering if tomorrow SABC can send us, Stephen, you want you must have a spokesperson. And they say you must choose between Fikile Mbalula, Julius Malema, and Kim Kolo. Which one will you choose to be your spokesperson?
I don't know. I think the question would be: would my job be to try and bring peace, or would my job be to do the opposite?
Yeah, but if they say you must choose one, which one do you prefer?
I don't really want to be a spokesperson. I mean, I think sometimes I listen to some spokespeople and I can see them doing actually quite a difficult job. You know, at times. Sometimes I think you want to try and go into an interview with a certain aim, and I try. My job in a way, is to try and work out what that aim is, and either to let them or to stop them. But I can't ever see myself going into politics like that, John. Which one would you do?
No, but if they say you must choose one guy to be your spokesperson, between these three, which one you will choose to be your spokesperson?
All right, John and Rupert, very interesting question. Becky Mtolo, very strong language. We'll put it to Tulisizwe Buthelezi in a little while. Tabiso and Polokwane, this issue about Rwanda and asylum seekers in the UK. Hi, Tabiso.
I think Stephen, the British Parliament, of course, following has clearly shown that there's a problem. I mean, I'm just baffled that asylum seekers will be chosen a country to say, no, you know what, you are more comfortable, we don't want you here. You'll be more comfortable in a particular country in the African continent. I mean, ordinarily, you're actually saying to those people that they should just go to Rwanda without them even, crossing all the seas and dying in the process. Maybe that should be the point, but I don't think it will resolve the problems that they are trying to resolve. I mean, we have seen that it is not going to happen. It's just unfortunate, and I don't know why would Rwanda agree to such, inhuman.
Well, they get paid for it. That's why.
I mean, that's what the problem is, because now if you agree with money, years later, the people of Rwanda will be complaining that the British has brought people here and all of that and all of those. It might have been a decent program, but the fact that there is not going to be a leader of that country forever, there will be a time that there is going to be a new leader who might actually see something very different. So I think it's inhuman, and it needs to be condemned in any manner as possible. You can't take people who are asylum seekers who are supposed to be in your country without taking care of them. You just deport them to another country. You dump them. There's dumping.
Yeah.
There's dumping, actually.
No, I think dumping is the right word. Tabiso Polokwane, thank you.
The cost of living crisis is real. Here's what one OUTsurance client did about it.
I'm Amy. I'm 26 from Kenilworth. When I got my 2022 Ford EcoSport, the immediate thought was to phone OUTsurance, and I pay only 819 Rand per month. No insurers were able to beat or match the premium that I'm currently paying.
Want a car insurance premium that will blow your mind? SMS out to 30754 now for a quote, and to find out about included benefits like panic assistance that sends the nearest medical or armed response unit to you wherever you may be 24/7. Here's Yusuf.
45 years old from Teigedal, Western Cape. I pay 700 Rand for my Polo 1.6 2021 model. If you haven't called OUTsurance yet, definitely get in touch.
Give it a go. SMS out to 30754 now. That's out to 30754. OUTsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's, and limits apply. Premiums are risk profile dependent and reviewed annually. Client comments do not constitute financial advice.
The highly anticipated Metro FM Music Awards are finally here, and the live concert happening with a star-studded lineup of DJs and live performances.
Make some beautiful noise!
On the lineup, Oscar Mbo, Oskido, Dala Tuxin, Makadzi, Lamiz Hallworthy, Mtunzi, Luandlunkulu, Umshaka, Amos, Naked DJ, and a special live performance by the internationally acclaimed Hoabili.
You can now secure your tickets from 300 Rand at computicket.co.za. Don't miss your chance to be part of this unforgettable celebration. 27th April at Mbombela Stadium, Mpumalanga. #MMA24. Black to the future. Metro FM. It's where you want to be.
Character will be tested between the great giants of the beautiful game.
RB Leipzig and Borussia Dortmund understand that the first prize is unreachable. However, they want to finish as high as possible. This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be. Catch RB Leipzig versus Borussia Dortmund on Saturday, 27 April at 3 p.m. Live on SABC 3. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
13 minutes to 7, the South African Association of PhDs says the awarding of honorary doctorates should not be trivialized. It's worried how some institutions, claiming to be institutions of higher learning, are awarding what they call honorary doctorates. And the Higher Education Department said this week it will take action against the Trinity International Bible University. They held a ceremony over the weekend to give such an award to the actor Selo Makakangube. The departments confirmed this institution is not registered as an institution of higher learning. Professor Cameron Modasani is the Treasurer General of the South African Association of PhDs. Professor Modasani, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen. Thank you for inviting us.
Sure. We see this happening all the time. I mean, it seems almost everyone, gets an honorary doctorate at some point. What action do you think the Higher Education Department should take against some of these institutions?
Stephen, this is actually a worrying trend, and we're actually calling upon the Department of Higher Education to actually uproot these institutions, and also we're calling on the Council on Higher Education, SAPS, as well as Universities of South Africa, to actually clamp down to stop this practice, because it's a worrying trend which has been continuing unabated with various celebrities and also politicians as well, which is deeply worrying.
Is it really just about advertising? If we give an honorary doctorate, or we claim it's an honorary doctorate when it isn't, and we claim we're giving it to this person or this celebrity, we're going to trend on X, we're going to, basically get a lot of publicity. Is it just advertising, really?
Stephen, it's two things. Firstly, it's partly it's about advertising. It's about giving the stature of that bogus institution, which is not particularly registered with the Department of Higher Education, and also at the same time, it's about the prestige of being called a doctor by these various celebrities. It's almost like everyone is desperate to become a doctor in this country. And strangely enough, only 2 people in this country are allowed to call themselves doctors. It's only if you've got a PhD qualification, and also if you're a registered practitioner. Only those 2 people in this country are allowed to call themselves doctor. Anyone else should not be calling themselves doctor without having earned the necessary qualification, including an NQF level 7, NQF level 10, and also a degree in medicine.
That also means people who have legitimate honorary doctorates from public universities. So if you have an honorary doctorate from UJ or WITS or UCT or University of the Western Cape, whatever, you don't get to call yourself a doctor outside that institution, right?
That's correct, Stephen. In fact, an honorary doctorate means it's honoris causa, which means for sake of honor, meaning you cannot call yourself doctor. You can only be referred to as doctor only by that institution that has conferred that degree. And also, as well, you can't just say, I'm Dr. Stephen Grootes. It's going to be PhD on PhD. Going to be Stephen Grootes brackets PhD honoris causa and close bracket, but not necessarily Stephen Grootes. So therefore, people should not be calling themselves Dr. Stephen Grootes if they received a legitimate honorary doctorate from any recognized institution in this country.
I mean, we see people, I can think of a few examples off the top of my head, Professor Modasani.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, maybe it's up to your organization, maybe it's up to someone else, maybe it's up to me to call them out every time they do it.
Definitely, Stephen, we should be calling them out, because these are, for example, you can indicate in your CV under achievements and awards, but not necessarily under academic qualifications. And those people should not be called Dr. So-and-so, because it's not, those honorary doctorates are not transferable to another institution or the public at large. So we should not be calling them Dr. So-and-so.
Professor Modasani, I mean, I get really irritated as a journalist when someone who's an influencer on Twitter calls themselves a journalist, and I haven't studied nearly as hard as you. I can't imagine how frustrating it must be for you and your members when people call themselves doctor when they don't have a PhD.
Stephen, it's extremely frustrating because for us to attain our PhDs, we go through rigorous processes, including writing coursework, examinations, original research, defending our thesis. We study for anything between 4 to about sometimes 10 years. It's really hard to attain a PhD. And then you have someone who has not even written or published anything. And then they go to call themselves doctor so and so without having worked it's really frustrating because we have worked extremely hard for our qualifications. You know how painful it is to receive review notes from your supervisors and to write a thesis of about 100,000 words. It's really painful, Stephen.
Professor Cameron Modasani, thank you. I really appreciate the time. Treasurer General of the South African Association of PhD. 7 minutes to 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
So take you down to Durban. We had protesting overnight last night or early hours this morning around the M19 Reservoir Hills area. It did clear up with the police on the scene, but it's all of a sudden very slow in that area. So possible outbreak of protesting again. Heads up to heavy traffic, Reservoir Hills between Mountbatten Drive and the N2 highway. In that area, there's some standstill traffic on the M19 both ways. Also some issues locally on the N2 going south. There's been a nasty collision involving a pedestrian south of Spaghetti Junction. Most of the lanes are currently closed, and there's a big backlog standing pretty much right back towards Umgene Road. So the N2 south real heavy, and then northbound you're queuing up heavily because of the onlooking factor, and then the roadworks north of Spaghetti Junction. M13 coming through Pinetown towards Paradise Valley's heavy. No lights Stapleton and Eden, so that's a big queue going up into Pinetown, and no lights on M7 at Bamboo. So if you're on the M7 again, another heavy run in towards the Pinetown area. Gauteng, that collision scene on the R21 after the roadworks at Olifantsfontein towards Tembisa. All lanes are open at that scene. It is slow on the R21 into the roadworks, but after that, the collision scene not really causing a problem. And if you're driving Cape Town, it's another misty morning. Not everywhere, but in pockets it is quite thick, so drive carefully, please. And an earlier crash on the M7 coming out of Mitchell's Plain north at Klipfontein Road has left a backlog of traffic from as far back as Govan and Becky Road. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Hello, Your Choice Hotline.
Hi, I need you to help me make a choice.
Well, with Ford, you get to make your own choices. Like on a new Ford Ranger, Ford Puma, Ford Everest, and the Ford Tornado bus. There's a flexible deal for every budget at your nearest Ford dealership today. Limited time offer. Your Ford, your choice. T&Cs apply.
In the heart of South Africa's coal-rich province, Mpumalanga, the Council for Geoscience pioneers the fight against climate change with the implementation of carbon capture, utilization and storage project. The CCUS technology captures carbon emissions at their source and securely stores them underground at carefully selected geological formations. This endeavour not only mitigates CO2 emissions, but also supports vital coal-dependent industries for South Africa's development. Near Leandra, the CGS has identified a site that will pilot this project as one of the developmental imperatives towards achieving a low-carbon economy.
Big stories of the day. Hashtag SAFM Sunrise.
5 minutes to 7. Good morning. Well, the elections are today exactly 5 weeks away. Various industries are looking at whether policies affecting them could change if there's a coalition government after the elections, for example. One of the industries vital to our economy and to what you eat is our farming, our agricultural industry. Wandile Sahlobo is the chief economist at the Agricultural Business Chamber. Wandile, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen. Thanks for having me on.
I mean, are you expecting any changes to government policy? I suppose it depends what happens, doesn't it?
It depends, Stephen, who wins the election. But my sense is that whoever wins, when they look at agriculture, they shouldn't be in a hurry to introduce any changes because there's a lot of work that has already been done. But where we have seen shortcoming is implementing those programs that have been designed. The master plan, for example, agriculture and agro-processing master plan is one of those. I know South Africans are tired of hearing about master plans, but that particular one, Stephen, it speaks to all of the necessary things in agriculture about how to grow the sector, agriculture, agro-processing, build competitiveness, attract more investments in the sector, and also the story of inclusion and job creation. and it takes it deep into commodity specifics, various regions about what we should be doing in those corridors. And I think a document like that, which also received a wide support of all of the social partners, is something that we should put on the table to say, whoever comes into government, to say, how do we implement it in a more accelerated way?
Obviously, if, for example, the EFF or MK have a big role in government, I mean, both of their manifestos talk about nationalising land. That would make a big difference.
That would make a big difference, Stephen, but I do still think that even on a land question, there's flexibility for whoever governs, even if it's the current government continues. Because you remember that as a country, somewhere between 2006 up until to today, we have been buying a lot of land under what is called the proactive land acquisition strategy, where government is buying this land and not necessarily transferring to Black South Africans, but leasing to them out. In our calculation, that land is about 2.5 million hectares. It's sitting on the government land holding accounts at the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. The current minister and the leadership that we have talked with at the department, they've expressed an interest of saying they are now in a process of actually rolling out title deeds to that land and allocating it to Black South Africans to utilize. And I think if they continue, or whoever comes into government, they have to roll that land out. And now if you think about 2.5 million hectares of land at the same time while you are implementing various interventions that the Agriculture and Agro-Processing Master Plan had talked about, and there is blended finance that the Land Bank and the others are working on, and the other commercial banks, that's a good suite of instruments to actually see our farming economy growing without actually making any drastic interventions in here. So whatever happens, Stephen, next month, I think when they step into agriculture, they should say, what do we have on the table and how do we increase more urgency to implement? Because our view is that there's all of the tools on the table. We just need to accelerate. And that's the view of many people. And indeed, on the land, even the current leadership of the department agrees with us on that.
And Wandile, quickly, if you can, does government policy actually matter? Or does rainfall or El Nino or global prices have a bigger impact on our industry?
Rainfall and global prices have a bigger impact in the near term, like the droughts and everything now. But government policy, when you're thinking about long-term growth, it is everything, which is why we think that it sets up that environment for how to grow the sector long-term.
Wandile Seklobo, really appreciate it. Thank you, Chief Economist at the Agriculture Business Chamber. Well, in a moment, you heard that strong comment from the ANC Provincial Secretary, Becky Mtolo, this morning, that Thulasizwe Buthelezi is a scandalous man. He, of course, is the traditional Prime Minister to the Zulu Kingdom. Well, we'll hear his response to that. This is all about a dispute between the Zulu Royal House and the KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Government, which, of course, is controlled by the ANC. Also, the Electricity Minister, Kgotshietsoro Makgopa, 28 days without load shedding. You with SFM leading the conversation, 7 o'clock.
In our top stories, Steenhuisen takes DA's Rescue SA tour to Bloemfontein and US Senate approves potential TikTok ban. Good morning. We start with election news. The DA leader John Steenhuisen has reiterated the need for change during his meeting with party supporters at the Bloemfontein City Hall during the DA's Rescue South Africa tour last night. Steenhuisen, accompanied by some members of the Federal Council and the provincial leadership, told a packed City Hall in Bloemfontein that the people of the Free State and Mangaung in particular have been suffering under the leadership of the ANC. Steenhuisen told the gathering it's time for his party to correct the wrongs created by the ANC.
And let's be honest, after 30 years of ANC corruption and ANC mismanagement, the odds are stacked heavily against the people of the Free State. Perhaps more than anywhere else in South Africa, the Free State has suffered the most under ANC misrule. It has a strong claim to be the most mismanaged province in the entire country. And similarly, Good Governance Africa recently confirmed that Mangaung, where we are tonight, is the worst run metro in the entire country. And this is despite the fact that Bloemfontein sits at the heart of our beautiful nation.
The Constitutional Court has issued directions in the IEC's bid to appeal the electoral court order that paved the way for former President Jacob Zuma to remain on the newly formed Umkhonto we Sizwe party's candidate list ahead of the May 2024 polls. The Apex Court has directed respondents that are opposing the application to file answering affidavits on or before tomorrow, adding that further directions may be issued. Kenny Mapanga reports.
In papers seen by SABC News, the IEC is appealing to the Constitutional Court, contending that the Commission received 22 objections to former President Zuma's eligibility to stand for the election and uphold 2 of those objections. The IEC, which is standing by its March decision, is asking for an urgent hearing, contending that it is in the public interest and the interest of justice for there to be finality on Zuma's eligibility before any votes are cast, to avoid the election and its outcome being tainted if the IEC's appeal succeeds.
The NPA says the case against the late former Tshwane Mayor Murunwa Makwarela will be struck from the court roll. Makwarela died after a short illness. The 52-year-old resigned as mayor almost a year ago after he allegedly failed to disclose his insolvency status to the city. He was facing criminal charges at the Pretoria Commercial Crimes Court. The NPA spokesperson Lumka Mahanjana.
Once the state is finished with the death certificate, the case against the former Tshwane Mayor, Dr. Makwarela, will be withdrawn from the roll when it appears on the 31st of July 2024.
Johannesburg Waters urged residents in the west of Johannesburg to use water wisely. This comes after it identified a high rate of water consumption in areas supplied by Doornkop North Meter, including Doornkop, Tepisong, Sloverville and Matolesville. Johannesburg Water spokesperson Nombuso Shabalala says the high consumption rate is due to the illegal connections and on property leaks, mostly in the informal settlements.
The high consumption is mainly due to illegal connections and on-property leaks, especially within the informal settlements. The ongoing high consumption has a negative impact on other suburbs in these supply zones, including Dobsonville and Protea Glen.
The Department of International Relations says it's appalled by the recent grim discovery of a mass grave containing the remains of more than 200 Palestinian civilians at the Nasir Hospital complex in Gaza. In a statement, DIRCO says the latest development comes after the discovery of mass graves at the Al-Shifa Hospital to the north of the enclave. As Showan Bryce Peace reports, the South African government says these findings call for immediate investigations to ensure justice and accountability.
South Africa says the lack of accountability by Israel is increasingly clear and called on the international community to act to bring the perpetrators to justice and ensure accountability for the victims and their families. It further warned that the evidence of mass killings of civilians point to war crimes under the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court.
And finally, the U.S. Senate has approved a controversial landmark bill that could see TikTok banned in America. It gives TikTok's Chinese owner ByteDance 9 months to sell its stake, or the app will be blocked in the U.S. The bill will now be handed over to the U.S. President Joe Biden, who has said he will sign it into law as soon as it reaches his desk. If that happens, ByteDance will have to seek approval from Chinese officials to complete a forced sale, which Beijing has vowed to oppose. Recapping the top story, the DA leader John Steenhuisen has reiterated the need for change during his meeting with party supporters at the Bloemfontein City Hall during the DA's Rescue South Africa tour last night. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, it's soccer action last night saw Mamelodi Sundowns near their historic 7th league title with a nail-biting win against Sekhukhune United, while Arsenal decimated Chelsea 5-0, the Gunners taking a lead at the top. We'll have the details just before 7:30.
SAFM.
guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Not a bad run across Joburg this morning, with the exception of the N3. It is quite heavy. Looks like there may be an issue coming off the N3 North onto the N12 East at Galuli. So the run through from Germiston is quite heavily back this morning. Pretoria side, still some traffic lights down along Solomon Mshlungu through the Pretoria East area, heading down towards Garsfontein. So that's all backed up. Durban, the protesting that we mentioned earlier this morning has ignited again. This is the Clare Estate and Reservoir Hills area. Routes like the M19 are quite badly affected with queuing traffic. Quarry Road, O'Flaherty Road in the Clare Estate area, burning tyres. Quite a mess in that part. If you need to get into the Clare Estate and Reservoir Hills area, today perhaps not the day to do that. The N2 going south has a nasty pedestrian crash between Spaghetti Junction and the M7. That is causing a big backlog from Umgeni Road and causing a backlog going north as well. And Cape Town, the earlier crash on the N7 north at Klipfontein Road has just left a lot of traffic delays coming out of Mitchell's Plain. Queues from Turfall Road all the way through towards the N2. And the N7's looking quite heavy this morning from Goodwood up towards the Bosmansdam Road exit. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
8 after 7, good morning. You with SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Glad you're along with us this morning. In a few moments, you'll hear from the traditional Prime Minister to the Zulu Kingdom, the Reverend Thulisizwe Buthelezi. He's also from the IFP, of course. You heard what Becky Mtolo said, the KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Secretary, just an hour or so ago. He said that Thulisizwe Buthelezi was a scandalous man. Well, we'll give the Zulu Prime Minister a chance to respond to that. Also, the Minister of Electricity, Josienso Ramakgopa, we'll hear from him this morning around load shedding. I'll ask him if we need an electricity minister after the elections. I hope he doesn't mind. 8 after 7, good morning.
Time. When you're a kid, it moves slower than a sloth trying to get through airport security. There is just so much of it. Skip forward a few years to your 20s. Time is still your friend. It says have some balance. Go party and have fun. Then your 30s hit. And time suddenly steps on the accelerator like it's trying to catch a traffic light before it goes red. 40s. Now time is moving faster than your 10-year-old on a sugar high. 50. You're desperately trying to save as much as you can, but time is moving so fast. And all you can think is, where did all the time go? That's why after 50 years of investing, we've learned that time is the greatest gift of all. And the good news is, if you invest early, time gives you money, and then money gives you more time for some much-deserved you time. Now, isn't that a compelling enough reason to invest? Ellen Gray, long-term investing. Ellen Gray is an authorized FSP.
The SA Sports Awards recognises and honours the best in sport on and off the field, celebrating 30 years of freedom through sporting excellence. Select your favourite People's Choice nominee. A. Eben Etzebeth. B. Gerda Steyn. C. Sia Khaleesi. D. Percy Tau. E. Kirsten Nishava. SMS A, B, C, D or E to 32020. SMS costs R1.50. T's and C's apply. Visit dsac.gov.za. Catch the 17th edition of the SA Sports Awards on Sunday the 5th of May at 8 p.m. live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC 1. Hashtag Izinjas a Game.
Agenda-setting conversations of the day.
10 after 7, good morning. The Office of King Misizulu KwaZulu-Natal has now issued a formal statement saying they are cautioning the KwaZulu-Natal provincial government that what they call the disdain with which the Zulu royal family, and the king in particular, is being treated is, quote, an affront to the Zulu nation. The traditional Prime Minister to the King, Thulisizwe Buthelezi, says the King is angry that the office of the KwaZulu-Natal Premier has terminated the employment of the King's cultural advisor, Enyosi Buzitsheni Mdletshe. The provincial government says Mdletshe was supposed to retire 3 years ago. He was kept on past retirement age and is also employed by another government entity through a company of which he is the sole director. As you know, there's been tension between the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal and the Zulu royal family and the IFP. Earlier this year, the leader of the KZN ANC, Siboniso Duma, interrupted a speech by Buthelezi, claiming he was about to make an inappropriate political comment. Buthelezi is also a senior leader in the IFP. Need I remind you, there are elections just 5 weeks away. This morning, the provincial secretary of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal, Becky Mtolo, said on SFM he believed Thulisizwe Buthelezi was a, quote, scandalous man end quote. Well, let's hear now from the Reverend Thulisizwe Buthelezi, the traditional Prime Minister to the Zulu Kingdom. Sir, good morning and thank you for your time this morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and all the listeners of SAFM.
You say the KZN government is treating the Zulu royal family and the king with disdain. Why do you believe that?
Well, it's not me who is saying that. It's the king himself. I conveyed a message on behalf of the king that the king feels that the government is treating him with disdain because you cannot remove a person who is attached to the king on a daily basis without even the courtesy of informing the king first that due to administrative reasons, Mr. Mdletshe must now be terminated. So we see a pattern emerging of the KZN government operating, without any courtesy, without any deference to His Majesty the King. And it won't end well for the KZN government because they are becoming emboldened in their disdain towards the King.
The department, the KwaZulu-Natal province said today that Mr. Mdletshe had been kept on past retirement age and that a person he mentored is now doing the job he was doing and that he's still involved through a private company. I think some people listening to you may think that that's fair. I mean, I understand the communication problem, but if a person can't really do a job forever, unfortunately, a person that was mentored by Mr. Mdletshe is now doing the job, what is the problem with that?
That's very disingenuous, Stephen, because it's not about retirement age. It's about the royal duties which Mr. Mdletshe performs. It's not about his age. And it's about acknowledging the role of His Majesty within the Zulu Kingdom, that you cannot make decisions about the staff of the king without consulting the king. So it's not about retirement age or mentoring someone else. The whole point of this issue is that the KZN government behaves as if the king doesn't exist.
This morning, Bheki Mtholo, you'll know him, of course, the provincial secretary of the ANC, he said you were, and this was his quote, you were a scandalous man. How do you respond to that?
I don't see how I feature into this issue, and I think that is what the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal is missing the point and will pay dearly at some point politically, because instead of dealing with the issues as they relate to His Majesty the King, they decide to deal with me as a person whom they are on record to say they don't accept as the Prime Minister of the Zulu nation. So they keep focusing on the wrong issue and being fixated on me politically, whereas this is not a political issue, but it is an issue to deal with our king. And in the process, they are causing immense political harm on themselves in the manner in which they are dealing with the king.
This is also, isn't it, about the fact that you're also a leader for the Inkatha Freedom Party? I mean, I realize that, you could easily say you didn't appoint yourself, you were appointed by the king, and that would be true. But it does complicate matters. I mean, is that what this is all about? Would all of this be happening if there wasn't an election? Let me put it to you that way.
In fact, Mr. Mdletshe is being punished, is a reprisal, because Mr. Mdletshe refused to be bullied by MEC Duma at the KwaXeza incident, when Duma bullied Mdletshe to introduce the king, and Mr. Mdletshe said, no, that is the role of the Prime Minister. So that is why you have a contract now being terminated in the middle of the month, and he's been given 12 days notice. Because if you see the contract itself, it expires in January 2025. But conveniently, on the 18th of April, he is given 10 days notice that his contract is expired. So this is in fact a reprisal to cut Mdletshe down to size for refusing to be bullied by the KZN government. So, nothing is complicated by the fact that I'm an IFP member. I'm merely executing the duties of His Majesty. And if the ANC continues to look at me through the prism of being an IFP member and not through the glass of being a Prime Minister, it won't end well for the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal.
Sir, thank you for your time. Thulisizwe Buthelezi is the traditional Prime Minister to the Zulu Kingdom. 17 minutes now after 7.
Come test drive the new Ford Territory, the family SUV with a spacious interior, 5 partial leather seats for your family, and a 12.3-inch touchscreen. Get yours at launch prices from only 590,000 Rand, including an optional service plan for a limited time only. Get to your nearest Ford dealer and test drive the new Ford Territory today. T&Cs apply.
Character will be tested between the great giants of the beautiful game. RB Leipzig and Borussia Dortmund understand that the first prize is unreachable. However, they want to finish as high as possible. This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be. Catch RB Leipzig versus Borussia Dortmund on Saturday, 27 April at 3 p.m. Live on SABC3. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. #We love it here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Big stories of the day. #SAFM Sunrise.
18 after 7, good morning. Well, as you know, we're now on day 28 with no load shedding. We are expecting demand for power to increase as it gets colder, and that probably will result in load shedding being reinstituted in the next few weeks. But the Minister of Electricity in the Presidency is Kgosientsho Ramakgopa. Minister, good morning. Thanks for your time this morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to the listeners. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Last year was the worst year we ever had for load shedding. What's changed between this year and last year?
Well, I was here. I was on your show explaining that question. So if you look at what happened late in 2022, October, we lost 3 units at Kusile. Each packing about 800 megawatts. So we lost about 2,400 megawatts. And then we took out unit number 1 in Quebec, 980 megawatts as part of our efforts to extend the life of our only nuclear power station. So if you like, we took out about 3,500 megawatts. So we did expect that we were going to battle a lot as a result of the loss of those 3 units. And those 3 units the 4 units have since come back. The 3 at Kusile, as promised, we make the point that we have made temporary arrangements to ensure that we construct a temporary stack, and we also requested and were granted the permission by the Minister of Fisheries, Environment, Forestry and Environment for a period of about a year. So we should install the original mechanism, the flue gas desulfurization unit, by end of this year. So we have the benefit now from November of 2024, the return of those 2023. The return of those units.
Okay,
and that's why you're seeing in part the kind of improvement that you are seeing.
I don't know if you could speak more directly into the mouthpiece, sir. It would help us. The fact that private companies and homes now have between them around 5,000 megawatts of their own generating capacity. So when the sun is shining, on a good day, that's 5 stages of load shedding. That must have an impact as well. I mean, we might well have load shedding without that.
Yes, let me make the point that there's an attempt to juxtapose or pit the renewables against the base load, which is largely fossil fuel, the ESCOM powered power station. You must do both, and that's why the energy action plan unveiled by the president identifies 5 outcomes. The first outcome is fixing ESCOM, and outcome number 2 is the acceleration of new generation capacity being procured from private sector, the acceleration of bid windows, and then that's number 3. And then the fourth one is very explicit: incentivize, if you like, the aggressive rollout of rooftop solar solution. So this is part of a deliberate effort by government to ensure that we have multiple sources of generation. And having said that, during periods of inclement weather, when you don't have clear skies, you don't get the benefit of that installed capacity of top solar solution. And the third point is that during the peak periods, like now, the peak will end now around 8:30 in the morning, and also the peak in the evening. You don't get the benefit of solar PV. So I think it's important that there's a greater appreciation that you need both. But what is going to help you is to ensure that there's a base load performance, and that base load, as I speak, is sitting with ESCOM, and that's why we private sector solutions to ensure that we are able to roll out if you like, solutions that approximate base load conditions, like the one we unveiled now in the Northern Cape.
Okay, and Minister, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can I ask, the open cycle gas turbines, these are Eskom generators, are they running harder than they normally would be to keep the lights on at the moment? I mean, are we spending a lot of money on diesel to stop load shedding at this moment?
No, absolutely not. I make the pains to explain this. So if you look at the year-to-date financial year, we're running them at 5.7%. If you look at the same period, or if you like, and also the average last year, we're running them at about 18%. So we're significantly lower. And in fact, the diesel budget has been half there at ESCOM, because we do anticipate exceptional, better performance rather, from the coal fleet. So there is no relationship between not having load shedding and running the open cycle gas turbines harder than what is usual. And then the second point to be made on the open cycle gas turbine is part of the fleet. They are meant to come in to help us during the peaks, and they've been coming in during the peak. So there shouldn't be a separation of OCGT from the fleet of ESCOM. It's part of the fleet, and that's why they get to be engaged when necessary during the peak. Sure. But I want to say to the listeners that no, we're not. We're using them instead of what we've been using them in the previous financial year.
Okay, and then the coal-fired power station. So I accept that as you say, and it's important what you said, that several, I think 3 units have come back, and I remember when they went off how bad that was going to be. Has the energy availability factor of the coal-fired power stations, has it improved? From what I can see, it's still below 60%, and you want it much higher than that. So has the energy availability factor actually improved significantly?
Yeah, so the two things. So the first part to be engaged is that the part of your energy availability factor is a function of your planned maintenance. And when I was here on your show the last time, I did say that we're ramping up planned maintenance. Just to give it context, during a winter of last year, we kept it at about 2,500 megawatts. When we went into December of last year and January, we had the highest planned maintenance in 3 years. We took out 18% of our total generation capacity, about 9,000 megawatts. If you look at February, March, that planned maintenance was sitting at about 7,000 megawatts. So what does it mean? Is that the more you are aggressive on planned maintenance, it negates, if you like, your energy availability factor. But now those machines are coming back, and in fact, the first of those cluster of those machines came back end of March, beginning of April. And that's why you are going to see that the EAF is improving as we are relenting on the planned maintenance. As we go into winter, a lot of these machines would have come back. When you open the show, you make an important point. You say that we are going to go into a cold period, and therefore demand is going to increase. So will be our relaxation on planned maintenance. So there's more megawatts that are going to come in because there's a science in how you do planned maintenance. You look at the periods of low demand and you use that for opportunity for planned maintenance. That's why we went aggressive during December and January for obvious reasons. And now those units are coming back because we are expecting an increase in demand. And that will be matched by the return of the units to ensure that you offset the increase in demand.
And Minister, if I may, a personal question. We've got elections in 5 weeks, so your term will come to an end. You technically stay in the office until the president takes the oath of office. Same president, new president, whatever happens. Do you think we'll still need an electricity minister after the election?
Well, that's a question to be put to the president. I only serve at the invitation of the president.
Minister, thank you very much indeed. Khonsienso Ramakopa is the Minister of Electricity in the presidency. Really appreciate the time, sir. 27 minutes after 7.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. Mamelodi Sundowns, 7 in a row, almost. It's getting a bit dull, isn't it?
Yeah, you know it, eh? But, it's another sunny day with Sundowns shining bright. Yes, they will be in 7th heaven should they clinch it, but they're getting closer after last night. 2-1 was the scoreline at Loftus Versfeld. That's who they beat, Sekhukhune United. Now, the team is facing a huge CAF Champions League semi-final second leg this weekend against Esperance Tunis. Rulani Mokoena, the coach of Sundowns, naming a much-changed team for the clash last night, but they were able to hold on for the 3 points, opening up a massive 13-point gap ahead of second place Stellenbosch FC. Now, the president of the Football Association of Zambia has been arrested and charged with money laundering offences. The country's Drug Enforcement Commission alleges that Andrew Kamanga obtained government funds under false pretenses and was part of a conspiracy to defraud. Now, they've said the 57-year-old used the money to fund trips for 2 associates to the 2023 Africa Cup of Nations in Ivory Coast earlier this year. Let's go to soccer action last night. Arsenal had a 5-0 win at the Emirates Stadium. They moved 3 points clear at the top of the Premier League. The emphatic victory coming just 3 days after Arsenal bounced back from losses to Aston Villa and Bayern Munich with a 2-0 win at Wolves. It gives Arsenal a 3-point cushion on Liverpool in second and puts them 4 clear of champions Manchester City in third. Here's Arsenal boss Mikel Arteta.
Yeah, it's a big performance collectively and individually. I thought that we were really good against a really good team, that it was in great form and that it was going to ask us a lot of questions, and I think we responded really well from the start of the game. I think we were really determined, really flowing, playing with a lot of courage and making things happen. And really happy with the results. It's a big day for our supporters as well, so really happy with that.
Rugby now with the assistant coach, Julian Redlinghayes, believing the Lions have developed their own bomb squad with their depth in the front row. The bomb squad was a term adopted by the Springboks during their 2019 World Cup campaign when they selected a 6-2 bench split. While the term has more commonly been used to refer to the Bok bench in general, it's still heavily associated with the ability to swap their front row or tight five without losing any of their dominance.
When I look at the Springboks, their team selection, you used to see that as well. You used to see subtle rotations. I think for us, if I can answer just for us, it's what the game needs. And there's a lot of things to consider. Obviously, the scrum is a big part of the front row's job, but also the way of play for the weekend, what we're expecting from them. So it's almost selecting the best guys for the game, starting for what we expect the game to be in the beginning of the game, and then also how the game is going to end. So it's a little bit of strategy from our side. It's not necessarily this is the best guy or second best guy. It's almost like what's the best player and combinations for this specific game.
That's the Lions assistant coach, Julian Redlinghayes, here on Sunrise. More sport, top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. Well, a lot more to come. We'll speak to someone who's trying to mediate peace, if you like, between the KwaZulu-Natal provincial government, the ANC and the IFP in that province. You're with SFM leading the conversation 7:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, investigating officer in the Senzumehiwa case, Sergeant Batu Mogola, is expected back on the stand at the High Court in Pretoria. 5 men are on trial at the High Court in Pretoria for the murder of the Bafana Bafana captain. The KwaZulu-Natal government has dismissed reports that it has fired King Misizulu Zwelithini's praise singer after the King issued a statement raising his discontent with the ANC-led provincial government, accusing them of disrespecting the Zulu monarch. And the DA leader, John Steenhuisen, has reiterated the need for change during his meeting with party supporters at the Bloemfontein City Hall during the DA's Rescue South Africa tour last night. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Just on the Joburg side of things, just a heads up, if you drive up the N3 this morning from Albert and Germiston, it's really heavily backed up across all lanes from the Elands interchange right through to a problem that appears to be inside Giluli. So you've got the roadworks at Van Buren and then a big backlog on that off-ramp coming off the N3 and turning out towards the N12 connection. N1's fairly heavy today as well. Bayers Nordia up through towards Ravonia Road. The highways are just generally getting busier. Sort of week by week, we just see bigger delays in the morning and afternoon peak periods. Vic Coppin Road, a crash at Waterford Drive, so heavy from North Riding on your way up towards the Four Ways area. And the N14, the Krugersdorp Highway, that is a collision hotspot this time in the morning, has claimed another victim, another crash before the Brockfontein interchange. So again, crash delays on the N14 pushing you back to the R55 Pretoria West exit. Lights down around Durban, the M7 going up into St John's Avenue Bridge, Bamboo, Bevis Road, so quite heavy from Hunstedman again this morning. A major pedestrian crash on the N2 South near Booth Road Bridge, that's south of Spaghetti Junction. That's a heavy backlog. Traffic standing as far back as Geni Road. That's basically down towards the M7 before you get out of that. The N3 is heavy from Paradise Valley into that congestion at Spaghetti Junction. And protesting around Clare Estate and Reservoir Hills this morning. Ridgeline Quarry Road and the M19 are just littered with debris and burning tyres, rubble and stones and rocks as well. Cape Town, collision on the N2 heading out of Khayelitsha. It's just there by Mew Way, so from the R300 it all gets a bit busy. And the M5 is super badly backed up. Get a queue from Southfield to Parkwood all the way through to the M2 highway off-ramp. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
And Tal Englachilla, morning again. How are the markets looking this morning?
Well, it's a sea of green in Asia, with those markets following the positive cues from global peers overnight, as data showing a slowdown in U.S. manufacturing activity in April raised hopes that the U.S. Fed could reconsider when to start cutting its rates. Now, Japan's Nikkei is up 2.3% and Hong Kong's Hang Seng climbing 2%. Over in Wall Street, futures are in positive territory, with traders on that end awaiting more corporate earnings, PCE inflation figures, and the first quarter GDP print, which is due tomorrow. The upbeat mood has filtered through to the JSE, with the all-share extending gains, closing 0.63% in the green. The rand trading slightly stronger, sitting at 19.10 to the dollar.
And then Capitec continues to grow. Its customer base is moving along.
Yes, Stephen, now that has boosted its overall profits. During the annual period, the group reported a 16% jump in earnings. As mentioned, it was boosted by a growth in its customer base. Its active clients grew to 22 million from 19.9 million in 2023. And Capitec is in the process of diversifying its revenue stream. It's doing so by expanding into business banking. It's also gained its own life insurance license and introduced new value-added services. These services are mainly digital and are being used by 9.8 million of its clients. Now, this move in particular cements its digital position in the banking space. And another interesting bit from the results is that 72% there was a 72% rather increase in its non-interest income. And this just shows, just like unlike some other banks, right, that growth within Capitec was not just attributed to tighter monetary policy, but more of organic growth.
And then Anglo American's diamond unit's losing its sparkle.
So the miner delivered a mixed production update where it was positive on copper and downbeat on diamonds. I'll be zooming in on its diamond unit, De Beers. Now, diamonds are known to be a girl's best friend. However, the current macroeconomic conditions are proving otherwise. In the first quarter, De Beers reported a 23% decline in output as a slow recovery in the market resulted in production cuts. And it's continued to lower expectations for the year, slashing production to 26 to 29 million carats from the previously guided 29 to 32 million. This is mainly due to a drop in diamond prices as demand dwindled. Now, interestingly, as we move into a more sustainable world, we are seeing growing demand for lab-grown diamonds, which is weighing on demand for mined stones. So the company also mentioned that as a factor weighing on production. It also mentioned that economic growth uncertainty has led to cautious purchasing behavior and warns of a slow recovery in rough diamond demand for the rest of the year.
Ntaleng, thank you very much indeed. Ntaleng Lechele back with us tomorrow. More business news through the day here on SFM.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Well, plenty of calls coming through, most of them around what appears to be this dispute between the Zulu monarchy and the KwaZulu-Natal provincial government. Mfundo from Cape Town. Hi, Mfundo, go for it.
Good morning, Stephen, and SAFM listeners. I'm just having questions here, Stephen. Is it a must that when the king is appointing the prime minister, must he appoint someone who's affiliated to a political organization?
As far as I know, no, it's not. It's up to them.
Yeah, because the reason I'm asking this, I just heard Prime Minister now saying that what is the ANC government or the KZN government is doing is not going to end well with the ANC. So with us knowing what this political violence is happening in KZN, there's alarms to that. And I think that the king maybe should have been strategic when appointing the Prime Minister and not look for someone who's politically affiliated, you know.
Yeah, Mfundo. Yeah,
it's caused concern, Stephen, because we're also going to elections now, and we know. I'm not a fortune teller here, but we know. Then we're going to hear some stories soon.
Yes. No, Mfundo, I agree. I'm concerned about it. We'll actually speak to someone who's trying to broker peace there in a little while. Mfundo in Cape Town, thank you. Kato in Limpopo, hi.
SG, how are you?
Yeah, I'm well, Kato. Go for it.
Katu will always be Katu. ANC will be ANC, monarchy will be always monarchy. In terms of constitution and legislative frameworks, we are governed by those. I mean, if they want to implement what you call customary legislative, then the price singer should be paid from the royals, not from the government, because government is governed by the policy itself saying 65, you go on retirement.
Yeah.
But then now, it becomes very clear that the monarch is aligned itself to a political movement, which is a conflict on its own. How will they break a peace between ANC and IFP in a long run? Because if I'm not a Zulu, but then I'm an ANC member, or if I'm not a Zulu, but I'm an IFP member, by so saying, they're saying I've been managed by the monarch of the Zulu kingdoms. But yet, a radio station like SAFM gives us information. It's very clear now that the monarch or the prime minister is political in the monarch. Thank you.
All right, Kato on the line from Limpopo. Yeah, it's very interesting. Vusi in Midrand. Hi, Vusi.
Morning, Stephen. Morning to you.
Morning, Vusi. Go for it.
Yeah, look. It's just unfortunately we are having a monarch which has lost credibility over time.
Sure, Vusi. I mean, he's only been on the throne for a year or so.
Yes, because you see the manner in which the monarch has been entangled in political issues within the province, whereby you see even the IFP, he went and taken extremists from the IFP to be relevant. While there's this issue of Ingonyama Trust at the hands of political expedients, you cannot run in that fashion. Look, currently what you see, what's happening within that faction of the ANC in KZN, they also want to have an authority. Just unfortunately, we are having a powerful MK, which is coming like a tsunami in the face of politics. So, it is, for me, it's very unfortunate that at the same time, while the ANC is supposed to be having a sober leadership, we are having this kind of leadership. Okay. On the extreme, we are having that ISP guy to be called a prime minister, something which is not even there in traditional politics.
Well,
it's a Western approach.
Well, I don't know so much about that. I'm not an expert on that, but Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi was the traditional prime minister for many, many years before. So I don't know if you can say that it's, a new thing.
No, check with the scholars. You can go to Zululand or UKZ and they'll tell you there's no side. But because for political expedience, you put something like that so that you need to counter what? You need to counter the ANC and the IFP to put the monarch as if it is always about everything.
All right. Yeah, we'll see in Midrand. We've heard you. Thank you. Talking of the ANC, let's hear from the ANC. Hello, Gift in the Eastern Cape.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to your listeners. Just a part of a flu. Look, I think Bundo and Kato are just spot on. For the record, Stephen, if you listen to the gentleman, the Prime Minister, I think there was an error of judgment by the King in appointing the said gentleman. For the mere fact that he has a posture that is aligned to the IFP, because listening to him, it was very painful, Stephen, listening to this gentleman saying that it will be an end for the ANC if they are continuing doing this in KZN. And just to affirm what Mfundo said, that it's very clear that this gentleman is pushing an agenda of the IFP, occupying the seat of the Prime Minister, very close to King Mrs.
Sure.
Because Look, I think Fundo also raised an issue, a pertinent issue that considering the situation in KZN and the past experiences of violence, you can't have the Prime Minister speaking that kind of a language on national radio in the morning when everybody is listening, making insinuations.
Well, Gift, that may... All right, you're from the ANC, and just before we go...
No. That does not cloud my judgment.
Okay, no. Hold, Gift. I'm coming to a different point, because there's something I need to put to you, which is you're speaking for yourself as Gift right now. You don't have the
yes, of course.
Yeah, okay, I just want to clarify that. Because earlier this morning you say that that Thulusizwe Buthelezi should not be speaking like this on breakfast radio. But at 5 minutes to 6, Bheki Mtolo, the provincial secretary of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal, was insulting him and calling him a scandalous man.
Unfortunately, I didn't hear that. I didn't even listen. I was not listening at the time. I'm just responding to what I have listened to.
Sure.
Which was
but if it goes for...
I'm trying to be objective here, not being subjective.
Sure. But would you accept that if you are going to criticize Mr. Buthelezi for what he said, you also need to criticize Bheki Mtolo for what he said?
I didn't hear that, Stephen. I'm not trying to be defensive here. I didn't hear.
No, fair.
I'm being honest to you because I was not listening. But I'm
fair
saying,
enough.
But my point is, I think that was just an error of judgment. Because you will recall, Stephen, lastly, that this particular gentleman asked for a meeting with the Ngonyama Trust some few weeks or months ago, and the CEO of that. In fact, writing to the CEO of that Ngonyama Trust, and I know for a fact that the chairperson of the board responding that he's the one who calls meeting, not the Prime Minister. And to me, again, this is a reflection of an error of judgment by the King in appointing this gentleman, because this gentleman is pushing the agenda of the IFP in that particular office. I'm very sorry about that, Stephen, but I'm being honest to you. That was an error of judgment in appointing that gentleman there.
All right, Gift. Look, if I were you, may I offer some advice? If you wouldn't mind.
No, I don't mind.
Okay.
I don't mind again.
You're a spokesperson for the Eastern Cape and the ANC. And that does not stop you from speaking up. But I would be a little careful about phoning in so often, because I think people are going to conflate your personal view and the ANC's view, Gift. And I don't like to discourage people from calling in. I like to hear from everyone. But I would just offer you that personal advice, if you don't mind.
No, Stephen. If I call in, I call in to express my personal views.
Well,
when you call me, you will call me because you seek an appointment on the views of the ANC.
Sure.
If we had issued a particular press release or anything that relates to the ANC, but on this one, I have a responsibility, and I don't think it's just a dissent, but I've got the responsibility to respond to some issues that I think are denting the image of this country, and also making people to in actual fact, the situation in KZN, everybody understands it, but we can't have people fomenting violence in that particular province who are in a position of responsibility. Okay. I've got any right to express my views on that, which I've, of course, personally.
Okay. Gift, I've offered you the advice. I'm not going to offer it again. I'm not going to stop you calling in, but I just wanted you to know what I thought, because I've said what I've said. I'm not going to say it again. Gift all right. Gift on the line from the Eastern Cape, spokesperson for the ANC there.
In this week's episode of The Masked Singer South Africa, the mystery continues as we meet Ice Cream, Blue Crane, Cheetah, and Gold.
She's going to go down in the history as the most difficult mask to figure out.
Who will be the panel of detectives and superfan audience's favorite? And who will be unmasked? Don't miss The Masked Singer South Africa this Saturday at 6:30 p.m. on S3.
Character will be tested between the great giants of the beautiful game. RB Leipzig and Borussia Dortmund understand that the first prize is unreachable. However, they want to finish as high as possible. This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be. Catch RB Leipzig versus Borussia Dortmund on Saturday, 27 April at 3 p.m. Live on SABC3. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. # We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
Well, the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa and the Western Cape saying it's now on course to resume full train services on the Central Line in Cape Town. There have been huge issues there. There was the successful running of a line involving the Transport Minister. She went on that line, I think it was from Cape Town to Hout Bay yesterday at the Cape Town Central Station. Raymond Maseko is the Regional Manager in the Western Cape for PRASA. Raymond, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to the listeners as well.
So it's been a long job. You had shacks built on train tracks in some places. You had big issues with vandalism. The train services that you have running now, are you confident they'll be able to run consistently?
Absolutely, and thank you for the opportunity to share. Look, when we opened on the 7th of July 2020, we could only run 13 of the 121 stations. At the moment, we have train services on all stations except for the 11 that are on the Central Line, from Philippi to Kapteinsklep and from Philippi to Chris Hani. And we believe that we can consistently maintain the services that we have resumed.
It's also about, and it must be costing you a fortune in security, because it was vandalism that got us here in the first place. So how difficult is that to do? I mean, I know that once train services are running, there's less vandalism. Are you starting to see the impact of that already?
Oh, absolutely, Stephen, absolutely. On the lines that we have reopened, every time we increase the frequency of the trains, we can see that the vandalism is dropping. However, PRASA has adopted a layered approach to security. So we have physical security in terms of internal security and 6 contracted security companies that give us additional manpower in case crime moves from one spot to the other. But we are also doing a second layer of security in terms of fortifying the boundary layers, that is the walls that we are building to protect some of these vulnerable areas and to put up stronger fences. And we are also moving into the technology area where we are introducing drones onto the network and CCTV. So it's a layered approach to this security, just to ensure that we do not go back to what happened in the past.
Okay, and this is obviously going to be costing you a fortune. I mean, security now must be one of your biggest costs.
It is the largest cost. In terms of the reason we are able to keep our prices so low, Stephen, is that the major input cost would always be in PRASA, a personnel cost, because we are a service organization, and then it would be electricity. But guess what? The security is number 2. So it is more than what we are delivering in service in order to protect whatever legal we have as we are growing the numbers back, but security is our second largest cost after the other employees of PRASA.
Quite something. Raymond Maseko, thank you. Regional Manager for PRASA in the Western Cape.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Just very busy on a couple of Joburg's highways this morning. The N1 is pretty fully loaded between Bayers Nordia and Rivonia Road. There's also these backlogs coming up the N3 from Germiston all the way through to the link to the N12 east at Giluli's interchange. Also a collision seen on the Mike one at Buccleuch. So if you're on your way up towards Midrand, there's quite a backlog through the Woodmead area. And another crash on the N14, the Krugersdorp Highway at the N1 Brockfontein interchange. That is a collision hotspot, a high crash incident zone this time of morning. May have something to do with the rising sun and poor visibility. Not sure. But again, the N14 from the Pretoria West exit all the way through to Brockfontein stays heavy. Durban, major delay alerts for the N2 south. A fatal pedestrian collision just south of Spaghetti Junction near the Booth Road Bridge. Only one lane open. Traffic is dreadful. It's all the way back through to Inanda Road. That's a super heavy delay. And there's some very heavy backlogs inbound from Pavilion on the N3, trying to get into the N2. And equally bad from Sherwood, trying to get out towards the N2, leaving Durban as well. Now, a lot of traffic congestion on the N2 running north up towards the Komashu Highway exit. The Komashu Highway and Chris Harney are very heavy, would point to an issue at that bridge system there. Cape Town, the Old Fora Road moving out of Mfuleni towards Muwe, driving west, that's heavy. And then from Mfuleni on Spine Road down to the N2 and down to Jafta K Masemola in the heart of Khayelitsha is really bad. And lots of traffic on the N7 today, queuing up northbound passing Langa towards Viking Way, and then it gets super bad from 4 Trekker Road all the way through to the Bosmansdam off-ramp. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Welcome to the SABC TV License Loyalty Program, where your payment isn't just about paying fees. It's about joining a vibrant community of connected viewers. Ready for the journey? Here's your roadmap. Sign up at sabctvlicenserewards.co.za and unlock an instant reward. You'll get an SMS to confirm your registration. Make a 50% or 100% payment to your account for a payment confirmation SMS and a promotional code. Explore our partners' product catalogs for an array of offerings. Receive an SMS voucher for your favorite outlet as the icing on the cake. Don't wait. Dive into a world of benefits. Register now at sabctvlicenserewards.co.za. T's and C's apply. Remember, TV license fees aren't just payments, they make a difference.
Get your payments done with the utmost security and convenience when you purchase a TV license now. With our new secure payment systems with a one-time PIN OTP feature and the choice of receiving your OTP via SMS or email, you can ensure prompt and secure payments. The additional use of capture will protect you against spam and automated data attractions. With TV licenses, you can enjoy watching all your favorite shows or movies that matter to you. Get yours today. Visit www.tvlic.co.za.
Lindelani ladies are on a massive search for 3 points, but TS Galaxy ladies say they will travel back from eThekwini with a song of jubilance. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Witness the queens of the beautiful game, Lindelani Ladies FC versus TS Galaxy Ladies FC on Sunday, 28 April at 11 a.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Keeping up with your TV license balance inquiries is now simpler than ever. No more waiting in queues. No more phone calls. Just SMS your ID or TV license account number to 44210 and secure your legal viewing fast and simple. Standard SMS rates will be charged. Terms and conditions apply. TV licenses. Pay yours. Make a difference.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
5 minutes to 8 now, the time. Well, we've heard this morning from the ANC Provincial Secretary, Bheki Mtholo. He told my colleague Elvis President just before 6 o'clock this morning that he believed the traditional Prime Minister to the Zulu Kingdom, Thulasizwe Buthelezi, was a scandalous man. We've heard as well from the Reverend Buthelezi himself and his response to that. He says that he has every right to say what he's been saying on behalf of the Zulu King, and that the Zulu King feels that he is not being properly respected by the KwaZulu-Natal provincial government. You know, of course, of the complexities in the different parts of this conversation. Part of it's about the ANC and the IFP, part of it is about King Msizulu Kazwelithini, and part of it, of course, is around the elections. How can we bring peace between them? Bishop Nathi Zondi is the Executive Secretary of the KwaZulu-Natal Christian Council of Churches and has been trying and is offering to negotiate some kind of peace. Bishop Zondi, good morning.
Good morning to you, Stephen, and good morning to your listeners.
I'm afraid this morning, sort of watched tensions seeming to rise, really, between all of the parties involved in this. How can we go about resolving some of these tensions, reducing the temperature?
Thank you very much, Stephen. Our call as the Council of Churches in KwaZulu-Natal and the KwaZulu-Natal Church Leaders Group is for calm. We're calling for calm and also for tolerance. We believe that it's important that we promote peace, especially at this time when the country and the province is going through elections. So our encouragement, what we would like to say to all our leaders is that let's encourage and promote calm and let's promote peace. And we believe that with tolerance, we can find a solution to our issues.
I have to ask, I mean, would we be in this position if it wasn't for the elections? Is that a big part of it?
Well, we do believe that the elections do play a part in heating up and giving us the kind of environment that we have currently. But of course, Stephen, elections will come and go, and we must still remain with a peaceful province and a peaceful country. And that is why it's important for all parties to strive to enjoy an environment of tolerance and make sure that we promote peace, especially at this time when we are going through a time of elections.
You can see in our country and in other countries, Bishop Zondi, during an election, people pick fights with each other because they want their supporters to support them in the fight. And I worry if that's what's happening here. And that's not how political leaders should behave. I mean, that's not good leadership if that is what's happening.
Well, as a council of churches, it is the church's responsibility to promote peace and stability. And that is why, Stephen, as you would know, that we have been engaging the various role players to plead with them for calm, for tolerance. Because unless we do that, it will become difficult to even engage in dialogue around the issues that make us differ. But we are hopeful, Stephen. We are hopeful. We really believe that leaders will find it within themselves to sit down and dialogue and engage the issues that divide them.
Bishop Nathi Zondi, thank you, Executive Secretary of the KwaZulu-Natal Council of Churches. Really do appreciate the time. Well, important messages there, and let's hope that people are listening, that tempers will start to cool down. One of the big things we've seen over the last 20 years is the expanded public works program. We'll be looking at that in the next little while. The President will be talking about that later today. Your mediated conversation, by the way, we're looking at the fact that we haven't had load shedding for nearly the last month, so for 4 weeks today, and of course just 5 weeks before an election. So we'll be talking about that. You with SAFM leading the conversation. Good morning. It's 8 o'clock.
In our top stories, Sergeant Mukhola expected back on the stand in the Mehiwa murder trial, and Steenhuisen takes the DA's Rescue South Africa tour to Bloemfontein. Good morning. Investigating officer in the Senzo Mehiwa case, Sergeant Batu Mukhola, is expected back on the stand at the High Court in Pretoria. 5 men on trial for the murder of the Bafana captain. Yesterday, Mukhola was asked why a warrant of arrest had not been issued to singer Kelly Khumalo. Khumalo is the former girlfriend of the slain soccer captain who was murdered in 2014. Mehiwa was at her parental home in Vosloorus when he was shot dead. Paul Magubane reports.
Kelly Khumalo's name has come up in 2 confession statements allegedly made by accused 1, Muzi Sibiya, and 2, Bongani Ntanzi. While the 2 statements mention different names of those allegedly involved in the murder, they both point to Khumalo as the one who ordered the killing. Defense counsel Zandile Mshololo questioned Mukhola about a draft application for a warrant of arrest for Khumalo. The draft application is said to be in the docket before the court. Defense counsel Charles Mnisi for accused 3 is expected to cross-examine Mukhola when the trial resumes this morning.
The Thohoyandou High Court in Limpopo is expected to hand down judgment in a case against a 34-year-old man who allegedly lured women through social media and raped them. Mukube Makabu is facing 5 counts of rape. Michael Makungo reports.
Mukube Makabu will know his fate today on whether he's guilty or not. He allegedly created a Facebook account claiming to be a prophet and managed to attract over 100,000 followers. The account in the name of Elmam Tabatsinde lured women to various places, including at the Muchundu River and the Pipiti outside Tando, where they were allegedly raped.
The KwaZulu-Natal government has dismissed reports it has fired King Misizulu KwaZulu-Natal's praise singer Buzicheni Mdletshe. This after the King issued a statement raising his discontent with the ANC-led provincial government, accusing them of disrespecting the Zulu monarch. But the provincial government says Mdletshe's extended 2-year contract expired in 2022, following his retirement in 2020. The KwaZulu-Natal provincial government spokesperson Bongi Gwala says there's already a new praise singer appointed to take over from Mdletshe after his contract ended.
There are 2 praise singers that were trained and mentored by Mr. Mdletshe, Mr. Mkhize and Mr. Mjali. And today, Mr. Mkhize is employed as a praise singer in His Majesty's portfolio. So it would then be not prudent for the provincial government to have 2 praise singers who are paid by government from the same budget. So that is where the issue is.
In election news, the DA leader John Steenhuisen has reiterated the need for change during his meeting with party supporters at the Bloemfontein City Hall during the DA's Rescue South Africa tour last night. Steenhuisen, accompanied by some members of the Federal Council and the provincial leadership, told a packed City Hall in Bloemfontein that the people of the Free State and Mangaung in particular have been suffering under the leadership of the ANC. Steenhuisen told the gathering it's time for his party to correct the wrongs created by the ANC.
And let's be honest, after 30 years of ANC corruption and ANC mismanagement, the odds are stacked heavily against the people of the Free State. Perhaps more than anywhere else in South Africa, the Free State has suffered the most under ANC misrule. It has a strong claim to be the most mismanaged province in the entire country. And similarly, Good Governance Africa recently confirmed that Mangaung, where we are tonight, is the worst run metro in the entire country. And this is despite the fact that Bloemfontein sits at the heart of our beautiful nation.
President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to officiate the 20-year anniversary of the expanded Public Works programme, taking place at the Buffalo City Stadium in East London in the Eastern Cape this morning. Ramaphosa is also expected to launch Phase 5 of the programme, which will be used to unveil more work opportunities that will benefit women, young people and poor households for inclusive growth, sustainable development and community empowerment. And while government continues to praise the benefits of this program in the Eastern Cape, accusations are mounting on the level of nepotism in the recruitment processes of the program. The Public Works and Infrastructure MEC has called on the public to report any possible acts of transgression in the administration of the program. Further afield, and finally, the U.S. Senate has approved a $95 billion aid package for Ukraine, Israel and Taiwan. The overwhelming vote in favor marks the end of 6 months of deadlock in Congress. It follows the package's approval by the House of Representatives on Saturday. The Senate Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer, said Washington had shown its allies that it would not turn its back on them.
To our friends in Ukraine, to our friends in Israel, to our friends in the Indo-Pacific, and to innocent civilians caught in the midst of a war from Gaza to Sudan, America hears you. We will be there for you. And to the whole world, rest assured, America will never shrink from its responsibilities as a leader on the world stage.
Recapping the top story, the investigating officer in the Senzo Mehiwa case, Sergeant Batu Muhola, is expected back on the stand at the High Court in Pretoria. 5 men are on trial for the murder of the Bafana Bafana captain. For SFM News, I am Anne Musa.
A very good morning to you in your SFM Sports Headlines. Cricket, it's a showdown, a T20 showdown with the Proteas players battling in auditions for a coveted spot at the World Cup. And we've got rugby, the Lions seeking to cement their dominance with a crucial win against Munster, hot on the heels of their Leinster victory. We'll have the details just before 8:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Krugersdorp Highway, on your way to Pretoria, stays heavy. A crash before the N1 Brockfontein. Interchange traffic all the way back to the R55. Pretoria West exit. Durban, this fatal pedestrian collision on the N2 South. It's happened between Spaghetti Junction and the M7. It's around the Booth Road Bridge. So that's where the scene is. Only one lane open. The N2 South is a heavy queue from Umgena Road. There's some real pressure getting into Durban on the N3 as you come up towards Spaghetti Junction. That backlog through Paradise Valley. In fact, the M13 queues from St John's Avenue Bridge into Paradise Valley, onto the N3 and then all the way through to Spaghetti Junction. A lot of traffic ducking out at Spine Road, trying to sneak through Westville. Other motorists stuck on the N2 from Sherwood, getting into that, or the N3, I beg your pardon, from Sherwood, trying to turn into that N2 southbound. So there's a lot of congestion around that part of Durban this morning. Probably will be like that for a while as well. Cape Town, a crash on the 304. That's the Cliphairville Road, just northern side of the N1 highway out in the Justenburg area, which is causing delays. And the N7's quite slow from Epping all the way through to the N1 highway, all backed up through Goodwood. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
8 after 8, good morning. You're with SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Glad you're with us this morning. You know the number 086 000 2032. Once again, talking about the situation in KwaZulu-Natal. Plenty of calls on that this morning. Your mediated conversation in a little while is around the end of, well, it's not the end of load shedding, but the fact that we've had such a long period without load shedding, and everyone does expect load shedding to come back as it does get colder and over the next 5 weeks or so. We'll speak in just a moment to Sikla Zikalala, the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, about the expanded Public Works program. It's an interesting conversation, that. How much time do you spend looking at your phone? One of the conversations you'll hear in the next few minutes. Good morning.
The University Registrar and Secretary to Convocation, Dr. Joel Baloy, cordially invites all members of the University of Venda Convocation to attend the AGM on Saturday, 11 May 2024 in Polokwane, Meropa Hotel at 10:30. The AGM will consider the Vice-Chancellor State of Campus Report, the President of Convocation Report, and amendments to the Constitution of the Convocation. To RSVP and confirm attendance, please visit www.univen.ac.za/announcements or contact Mr. Mashuda Ramarebo on 060-906-1902.
SAFM. Pride prime time all day long.
Well, later today, President Cyril Ramaphosa will be at the 20-year celebration of the Expanded Public Works Program. It's in Buffalo City in the Eastern Cape. As you know, the program has provided millions of job opportunities for people. The Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure is Sekla Zikalala. Minister, good morning. Thanks for your time this morning.
No, thanks, and thanks for having us in your program, Stephen.
What difference do you believe the Expanded Public Works Program has made over the last 20 years?
Well, it has assisted us in fighting poverty. It has provided some kind of intervention for people in rural areas and in our townships through jobs, especially for those who possess low skills or no skills at all. It has, however, also assisted people with skills who were unemployed to start their businesses because they've worked in EPWP and then they exited with skills and they've managed to start businesses. It has provided more than 18 million opportunities to South Africans.
Okay, so I mean, we have two big problems and we're trying to use the Expanded Public Works Program to fix two of those big problems. The one is unemployment, and as you say, it's made a difference there. And the other is bad infrastructure. I realize that people spend a lot of time working on projects, but is it really fixing infrastructure? I mean, I think if you ask many people driving around the country, our roads are getting worse. They're not getting better. When, if the program was doing so well, then all of our infrastructure would be getting better.
Yes, this program is trying to assist in fixing infrastructure and ensure service delivery. Though it was started not aimed at infrastructure development, but we are now anchoring it to also interventions toward assisting on infrastructure development, such as fixing potholes, road maintenance, waste management. Those are key priorities as we go forward.
Okay, so I understand that. But my question is slightly different. Is it actually working at doing that? I mean, is the Expanded Public Works Program actually improving the infrastructure that we have?
We have seen towns, small towns, benefiting from EPWP, where they've done a road maintenance, where they've done road paving through bricks, and that has assisted a lot in bringing infrastructure to the people.
Okay, so I know you will say and government will say that the Expanded Public Works Program is a success. And I understand why you say that. And there's a strong basis to say that. But let me put a critical question. If it is such a success, why would we still need it? So in other words, if this is about creating an infrastructure, or fixing infrastructure and creating jobs, the people in the program should then do other jobs. So what's supposed to happen is that the infrastructure gets better, the economy grows as a result, and other jobs are created. So the danger, the risk, is that what can happen is that we could just end up using government money to give people an income, and sure, that's fine, but it doesn't resolve the bigger problem, which is that the economy is not growing and not creating jobs on its own. If the economy was creating jobs on its own, we wouldn't need the Expanded Public Works Program, is my point.
Well, we will need public works to ensure that there is maintenance, which is quite an important aspect of infrastructure investment. If you don't deal with maintenance, you mean you must just have that investment and it get ruined, which is not good. I would fully agree with stimulating other sectors of the economy, which we are doing as government. And there are people who are exiting from this program to small businesses, such as small farming, a project that we have seen from people exiting from EPWP. So it does provide that stimulus or that startup for people to exit and then start their own businesses.
Okay, so you say it is resolving that problem. How's it going to change? It's going to, I think it's phase 5 or 6 now. What changes are you expecting in the program?
Changes we are expecting, it's more institutionalization, where you will have proper recruitment of people on the EPWP, proper training, and then clear enterprise development so that people will be able to live without depending on this program. And we would not want to see people who have been beneficiaries from this program going back to unemployment and poverty. So we are aiming that from now onward, we will create, over the next 5 years, we'll create close to 5 million or above job opportunities.
Minister, thank you very much indeed for your time. Sikla Zikalala is the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure. That event underway in Buffalo City with the President today. 20 years since the start of the expanded Public Works program. Have you worked as part of the program? Maybe someone in your family or your community has. What's the experience been? What's happened after the job opportunity has come to an end? And did it actually work for your community? 086 000 2032.
At SFM Radio and at Stephen Grootes on Twitter.
Thomas on the line from Newcastle. Thomas, hi, good morning. You've been watching the situation in KZN this morning around the monarchy and the KwaZulu-Natal provincial government.
Which much concerns, Steve, which much concerns.
Me too.
And I was listening, fortunately, at Elvis's program when he spoke to the ANC guys. I would say the ANC guys because I would struggle to remember their names.
It was Becky Mtolo for the provincial secretary, and then Bongi Gwala, who you may remember, Thomas, is now working in the KwaZulu-Natal provincial government. Yeah.
Yes. Initially, Bongi Gwala spoke very well in that he kept it to his portfolio or responsibility as a spokesperson. And then when the gentleman came, Mr. Mtolo, when the question was being put to him, he straight away said, this is about a gentleman who is, like you've been quoting. And he wasn't responding to the answer. So, in other words, he deflected. I would ask the gentleman from the Eastern Cape, the spokesperson, I had to say, to go back and listen to that clip. You see? And when Kelly was asked, I was listening to, because I was very keen, he even said, I will not like to speak on me personally because I don't understand why this thing was about me.
Yeah.
Because it's not about me. You asked him, you say, you are saying the ANC. And he said, it's not me. I'm speaking on behalf of the key. And if these guys from the ANC, I would say that, understand the protocol well, maybe in other kingdoms or royalties, it doesn't. In our monarchy, the king has people he sends on his behalf. That's all.
Yeah.
And if they would keep the thing to the issue on hand, because even with the microphone story, he was preemptive in his. He thought Kellys was going to do this. We don't have a fact, and we haven't proven that Kellys did that.
Yes.
He responded on something that he perceived. We are not led by perceptions.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah.
So they need to stop there because they are concerned, and this is my observation. Fortunately, I'm a political. I just vote. They are concerned that they will lose. So Mtolo wants to keep his position by hook or crook. They shouldn't cause us to be on each other's throats.
All right. No, Thomas. Yeah. Thomas, thank you. Glad I've got my glasses on this morning. Thank you. Thomas on the line from Newcastle. Tommy on the line from KwaZulu-Natal. Been a couple of weeks, Tommy. Hi. The Expanded Public Works Program, your view?
Yes, Stevens. In my minute, I'll split 2 points. Firstly, Stevens, it's a question. I think I'm surprised that we are 30 years to democracy, but people don't understand the concept of the rule of law. In the public service, you've got two types of people. You've got people who are elected. You've got people who are employed following the law. And in terms of the age limit, the two should not be treated with the same brush. So, and secondly, the leaders, whether the king or elected leaders, are number two. They've got a vertical hierarchy with the law. Its law is number one above them. They are subject to the law. And then it is leaders. And then it is people. That is the land. Now, on the question of KwaZulu-Natal, we should be saying, it's not a rule of Mtolo, it's not a rule of provincial government. What is the rule of law saying on the matter, on the basis of the person who was appointed as a public servant What is the law saying? Does it allow people to go beyond 65?
Oh, I see. Yes. So, in other words, the person was employed by the KZN provincial government, and why should they be different to anyone else?
Yes. You've got Zuma, Mr. Jacob Zuma, who's 82. He's allowed to go to government, but on an elected office.
Yes.
Now the people are so ignorant, and Stephen, the issue of illusion is a problem. It's better. The ignorance is much better than the illusion, because the people are speaking wrong things with authority. Like your previous caller, what is the law saying on the public service, on people who are employed? Lastly, Stephen, the issue of the EPWP, it is important that we go back to 2012. I'm also the chair of public works nationally on behalf of 257 municipalities. It's important that when we look at it, we also give echo the minister in giving it proper context by going to its origin. The EPWP is not an employment program. It is a poverty alleviation program. Poverty as an outcome generated by the unemployment generated by the lack of skills. So it's not an employment program, it's a poverty alleviation program, but it attacks the root causes that causes poverty, which is unemployment, which is as a result of the skills. So in a 1 year or 2 year program, you then enroll people in the program, they get a stipend while them on the skills, so that when they exit the program, they can use those skills to compete, to go compete in the job market. That is the essence of the EPWP.
All right.
It's not about the infrastructure and everything and everything else. It will depend on which areas do you empower them in terms of the skills.
All right, Tommy in KwaZulu-Natal, thank you. We've heard you. 21 minutes after 8.
Business owners, don't waste your time searching for an employee that has it all. They do not exist. But I will tell you what does exist. The Kia K2700 Workhorse. It's versatile, powerful, and reliable. It also arrives on time every day. Save your cash with no deposit and only pay 5,799 Rand per month. It's the business partner you've been waiting for. Up your game with the Kia K2700 Workhorse. Visit kia.co.za for more. T's and C's apply.
Kia. Movement that inspires.
The Science of Life on SAFM.
Well, there's new research showing that we spend more time on our screens than almost anyone else as South Africans, and that in fact in terms of our waking hours, we're spending almost 57% of our time looking at screens, looking at phones, tablets, things like that. There are all sorts of interesting questions, and particularly around our phones, why we're spending more time than other people. Nomshado Lubisi in Kosenkulu is the head of communications at Media Monitoring Africa. Nomshado, good morning.
Morning, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. I mean, it's interesting to see that we're spending more time on screens than many other countries, and I'm not entirely sure why that might be.
I mean, I think other studies over the years have truly shown in terms of our relationship with screens or just digital media in general, and how South Africa has kind of situated itself as the trend starter, the entertainer, the humorous country, if you may put it like that. I mean, some would put it in the sense of psychologically, it's us entering a digital reality, running away from what we're currently facing as a country. Some say that it's a special, unique feature that we have in the sense of our online presence is so strong. Why not further it, and why not just stick to it?
I wonder if maybe it's also because we use our phones to work. So in other countries, maybe richer countries, for example, and we sort of sometimes straddle worlds, in our society, that we don't have a computer or a tablet or whatever, so we actually use our phone to work. We run a business off WhatsApp or things like that. I wonder if that's maybe part of it, and that's why, instead of the phone becomes the main work device. You don't have another device to work on.
I mean, definitely there are different contributions to us spending that time on the screen. And I think the biggest one is, generating income, whether it's through work, as you said, or whether it's through work, content creation, or whether it's even us, marketing ourselves online in terms of our entrepreneurship. And I think we've seen how the diversity in that has happened, particularly if we're going to now zone it back into our continent. I think we're part of the top 3 countries when we're talking about consumption and using digital tech to really advance ourselves. But even interestingly enough, when it comes to tech innovation, we're also still in the forefront. So this is like app creations, even the virtual reality, creating characters and so forth.
There are other things to it as well. I mean, we've seen the price of data come down quite dramatically in South Africa. It was way too high before. The fact that you can probably do more on WhatsApp now than you could before, and WhatsApp doesn't use much data. You get, special deals that allow, that make WhatsApp almost free on cell phones, things like that. And then the other thing about it is that you can spend so much time there because there's so much content if you're a part of the right groups. You're speaking to your family around the world, you're speaking to work people around the world, you're getting content from all sorts of places on one platform.
I mean, agreed. I think that's also the power of algorithms. The mere fact that we're all sitting in our own echo chambers and we are, engaging with content that obviously we like, or with individuals that we feel like we've got the same interest in content. But also, when you take a step back and start looking at the overall usage of each platform and the generational, there's no generational gap like TikTok, whether it's an elderly woman or the youngest of Gen Zs, if you want to call it. It's such an open platform that in each you engage with all different age groups.
Thank you very much indeed. Nomshado Lobisi Nkosunkulu is the head of communications for Media Monitoring Africa. Well, don't forget, in a moment, 28 days without load shedding. How did we manage it, and what can we expect in the future? How has the grid changed? That's your mediated conversation this morning. That to come. Kathy, of course, from 9 o'clock as well. So plenty to come here on SFM. We'll be watching the situation very closely in KwaZulu-Natal through the day. Kathy, I understand, in fact, will be speaking to the Water Affairs Minister, Sindram Mqunu. He was in Guyana yesterday as well. Coming up now to 27 minutes after 8 o'clock.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. Some cricket.
Yes, it's the ultimate proving ground, the Cricket South Africa T20 Challenge. It's the last chance for players to shine before the World Cup picks. Now, they have to impress the Proteas selectors ahead of the World Cup in the USA and West Indies. That'll start in June. The Lions, they'll host the Titans in what will be another blockbuster Highveld derby. That's the first semi-final tonight, followed by the Dolphins welcoming the Warriors to Durban for the second semi-final. That's happening tomorrow, both games starting at 6 p.m. Established stars like Reza Hendricks and Lungi Ngidi to rising talents like Ryan Rickleton and Vian Mulder, all eyeing a ticket to that World Cup stage. More cricket, a sensational unbeaten century from Australian all-rounder Marcus Stoinis, steering the Lucknow Super Giants to a thrilling 6-wicket victory against the Chennai Super Kings in their IPL match in Chennai yesterday. Replying to the Chennai Super Kings' total of 210 for 4, Stoinis, promoted to number 3, responded with a brilliant 124 not out from just 63 balls with 13 fours and 6 sixes. Rugby now. The defending champions, Munster, who are unbeaten in their last 8 matches against South African opposition, are in town on Saturday, with the Lions assistant coach Julian Redlinghuis needing no reminder that pragmatic Munster will pose different questions than their countrymen Leinster, who fell short to the Lions last weekend.
What you do find with the Irish teams, they all play smart rugby, so they've got small nuances with their breakdowns, with their defensive breakdowns. So in that aspect, you can expect very similar play. I think Leinster do play a little bit more. And listen, me saying that as a prop is maybe a little bit dangerous, but I'm going to give my best shot. Munster with their 9, with their 10, they tend to kick a lot more contestables, whereas Leinster would still look to run broader. So, I think our receiving of our kicks, working back to set ourselves into counter or to set ourselves into sending the kicks back, I think that's going to be a little bit different than what we experienced this weekend versus Leinster.
We go to the Stormers now. Their top four dreams put to the test. They have a crucial clash with Leinster. After a slippery defeat to the Ospreys, the Stormers, tied with their rivals on the URC points table, know that there's no room for error. With only a bonus point salvaged in their last outing, they're under real pressure facing the Irish Giants, who are hungry for redemption after their own recent stumble. Here's the Stormers defence coach, Norman Lake.
The past weekend, past games was in our favour. We were standing on the poles, clapping hands, smiling to each other. This weekend it wasn't the same. Didn't come off, and a few lessons that we've learned, but it was definitely for the good. Not the loss, the lessons we've learned to make us a better team.
And finally, tennis. Iga Swiatek saying she's proud to be celebrating 100 weeks at number one as she prepares for the forthcoming WTA Madrid Open. She's claimed 3 Grand Slam titles and a remarkable 120 victories from the 143 matches she's played. More sport for you on SFM comes around 12:30 next. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thank you very much indeed. What's changed with load shedding and our grid in the last year? That's next. You're with SFM leading the conversation 8:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, Equal Education and its law centre have filed papers to the High Court in Cape Town to order the Western Cape Education Department fine schools for unplaced learners. Attorney at the centre, Yolisa Piliso, says they've been flooded with queries from parents seeking support for the placement of their children, particularly in the Metro East Education District. The investigating officer in the Senzumehiwa case, Sergeant Batu Mukhola, is expected back on the stand at the High Court in Pretoria. And the US Senate has approved a $95 billion aid package for Ukraine, Israel and Taiwan. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still very heavy on the N14, the Krugersdorp Highway. If you're on the way to Pretoria, another crash on that section of roadway just before the N1 Brockfontein interchange. Traffic parking all the way back to the R55 Pretoria West exit. The rest of Joburg and Gauteng as a whole, really, everything's sort of where you would expect it to be. Nothing too alarming. Durban has the biggest delay this morning around the country. It's the N2 and associated routes routing through Spaghetti Junction. A fatal crash involving a pedestrian near the Booth Road Bridge. That's between Spaghetti Junction and the M7. Traffic's heavy all the way back through towards the Inanda Road. You'll probably find just one lane open to squeeze past that. And now coming into that traffic on the N2 South is the N3, which starts to queue from sort of Stapleton Road territory on the M13 into Paradise Valley and then onto the N3 all the way past Pavilion and up to Spaghetti Junction. A lot of traffic bypassing that enormous queue and jamming up the M13 Westville through the sort of restricted section on the N2 bridge down into Sherwood. So very heavy in that part of Durban today. Cape Town, a big crash scene on the R304, the Clipperville Road. That is just north of the N1 highway. So there's quite a backlog of traffic both directions out that side. And the rest of the Cape Town highway is just battling along with a little bit of poor visibility. It's very low cloud base and a lot of mist across the Cape Town region, impacting visibility. Give yourself time to get through safely. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Attention to all music lovers. The highly anticipated Metro FM Music Awards are finally here. Y'all ready? Purchase your tickets to gain access to the awards ceremony and the live concert happening on the 27th of April 2024 at Mbombela Stadium, Mpumalanga.
Yo, we about to have some fun in here.
You can now secure your tickets from R300 at www.computicket.co.za.
Yeah, man, this is a big night.
With a star-studded lineup of DJs and live performances, don't miss your chance to be part of this unforgettable celebration of talent and music excellence.
Come on, Mbombela, come through. Let's do this.
Hashtag MMA24, Black to the Future. Metro FM, it's where you want to be.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
27 minutes now to 9 the time. Well, today marks 4 weeks since we last had load shedding being imposed by Eskom in South Africa. In other words, today is day 28 without any planned power cuts. Of course, that doesn't mean everyone has had electricity all the time. As you know, in central Joburg this week, a substation failure led to 5 hospitals being without power for a while. But as winter approaches, it appears that hopefully maybe, Eskom's power generation system is in a better position than it's been in the past. At the same time, we must not forget that last year was the worst year on record for load shedding, which means we're comparing this year with the worst ever year. At the same time, we now understand that private companies and private homes have built over 5,000 megawatts of generation capacity. In other words, when the sun is shining, there's a lot less demand for electricity from the national grid. So then what's happening in our national grid, and does this mean we have a much better winter? And before we start, just a reminder, no one is saying there won't be load shedding again. Everyone we've spoken to does expect load shedding to come back at some point. First this morning, Jose Maleshe is an energy expert and founder and managing director of RUBK Partly Limited, PTY Limited. Vali Pariachi is a power and energy expert, former executive manager at Eskom and at City Power in Johannesburg, plays other roles in our power grid system still. And Mohammed Mahdi is an energy expert and CEO at Sinan Energy. We start then with Jose Maleshe. Jose, good morning. Thanks for your time this morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to the listeners.
We spoke to the Electricity Minister, Khonsiento Ramakgopa, this morning, and I asked him what had changed between this year and last year. And the most important point that he made, and the first thing he said, was that at the beginning of last year, we lost 3 Eskom units. We lost 3 units at Kusile, we lost another unit somewhere else as well, and that those units are now back. Is that an important reason as to why we were in a better position this year?
Yes, Stephen, it's an important reason. If you remember, we had a discussion last year where we had 0 units at Kusile that were even working. So we now have those 3 units that are back and the 4th one. Kubek also was not there, which is now operating around, which has capacity of about 9,000 megawatts. That was not there, so that is also contributed. But on top of that, we have a contribution in terms of the reduced unplanned outages, meaning just random breakdowns have been reduced significantly by almost 3,000 megawatts. That, on the supply side, is one of the things that has helped, not the only thing.
Do you expect all of this to continue? In other words, do you expect things, generally speaking, to continue to improve for the national grid?
There is some improvement that can be observed in terms of performance, but we are not out of the woods yet. And remember that we have some of the demand that is now reduced because of we are not yet in winter. Secondly, we have the solar PV availability. Remember that when it's cloudy, rainy, and the weather is relatively cold, that rooftop system availability is going to be far less. And then we're also going to have a higher demand that comes from consumers. That will then challenge the supply side. So we still are not out of the woodwork until we get to a point where we have reserve or standby capacity that is able to come in when there's breakdowns or there's maintenance or anything, which is standard practice in the world. We cannot say with certainty that we are out of trouble.
We've seen people, the private sector and households, investing in their own private generation capacity. I understand that's now over 5,500 megawatts. How significant is that? Without that, would we still be having load shedding?
That's significant. However, we should remember that those rooftop systems use Eskom as backup when there's non-availability. So the likelihood in weather that is not favorable is that they will be less. Therefore, the demand will still increase. So they are favorable when the weather is very good and are very much assisting, yes, in terms of reducing the demand and helping the system. But that's not throughout the year.
If load shedding ends or if load shedding becomes less intense, will that lead to fewer people investing in backup power? In other words, the rate of investment that we're seeing from private companies and households will start to slow if there's no load shedding.
I would expect for that to happen, yes, Stephen.
So then over the longer term, where we are now with power, with privately owned power, maybe it'll continue for a little while, there'll be momentum, but if load shedding stops, we may not end with a situation where many people are generating their own power.
Yeah, from a household perspective. We do, however, have those large-scale renewable energy projects where the private sector is still investing. With that, we expect to continue to happen.
Last week, City Power confirmed to us, so City Power, as you know, sells electricity in Joburg. They said that they'd seen a big decrease in demand for power from City Power. So people in Joburg are producing their own power. But this also has the consequence that City Power is making less money. So revenue for the city of Joburg is down as a result of all of this. I don't know if we've yet felt that for councils, but we must now surely be getting to the point where we are going to feel it, if not now, in the next couple of months.
Where we are going to?
Where we're going to feel the impact of less revenue for councils because they're selling less electricity because some people are producing their own.
Yes, to an extent. However, remember that they also, in terms of the tariffs in winter, will increase the tariffs, and there's a relatively more demand in winter. But I take the point because winter is just a few months relative to the full year. But there is an offset somewhere.
Okay. And Eskom's own generating capacity, I'm presuming that much of it is more reliable than it was. There's been a lot of maintenance over the last few years, and that should make most of it more reliable. And some of the units that are coming on are relatively new units. So I would like to hope the whole system is more reliable than it used to be.
We hope so. It should be, because as you say, there's been relatively more focus on maintenance. I mean, from about 3,000, at some point we saw 10,000 megawatts of plants that were being under planned maintenance. So that should bode well for the future, but reliability of a system takes a long time to test and to verify. So we expect that. We can't say that with certainty.
Jose Malesha, as always, thank you very much indeed. An expert in power development, finance specialist and founder and managing director of RUBK Pty Limited. 19 minutes now to 9. Continue a mediated conversation around the state of our electricity grid as we've been without load shedding now for 28 days. Vali Pariachi is the chair of the management committee of the NRS Association of South Africa, also a former executive manager at Eskom and at City Power. Vali, good morning. Thank you for rejoining us on SAFM.
A very good morning, Stephen, to you, my fellow panelists, and to your listeners. Many thanks for having me back.
If we look at some of what we've seen over the last year, so for example, the World Energy Council released an index showing we had fallen several places in our ability to produce electricity. I presume this is based on what happened last year, and we can really see how bad last year was.
Yes, Stephen, that World Energy Council index, the Trilemma Index, places South Africa at number 69 for 2023, and they fell 5 spots for 2022, although I believe, in my opinion, they should have fell even 10 spots or even longer, because just to get back to your question, the Trilemma Index, which measures 3 important parameters, which is the energy security, which actually focuses on the nation's capacity to meet current and future energy demand, reliably withstand and bounce back. That is from resilience, energy equity, that is the people's ability to access power, and of course the environmental sustainability. South Africa, I'm of the opinion, is rock bottom on all those 3 parameters, exacerbated, as you say, by the 7,000 hours of load shedding last year. So I'm of the opinion that it's going to take us a long time to address those 3 parameters, and it's not going to happen anytime sooner. Stephen, and I'm of the opinion that load shedding is still going to be here for the next 2 or 3 years, notwithstanding that there's a lull there now, but that's short-lived. For me, the grid is still unstable, erratic, and the real acid test is going to be, we're going to winter, where the demand is going to increase from 28 gigs to 33 gigs. And that's the real acid test. And of course, we welcome and we commend the various teams, generation and the ministry for this lull. But I can talk about why we're in a lull, calm before the storm, Stephen.
Is it partly because, it's been hotter than expected? There's been a lot of sun in many parts of the country. That must be part of it. Winter is a different kettle of fish. But, before we went into last winter, Eskom said in its own predictions that we could go as bad as stage 8. We didn't in the end. We went to stage 6. We went to stage 6 at some times for very long periods. But no one's sort of predicting that again.
No, I don't think we'll get to stage 8. But maybe as an NRS, we can't say that in winter we will not get to stage 6. But of course, if we have a catastrophic failure in the grid, as a worst case, we could get a total grid collapse. But what we're saying that won't happen. But what's going to happen, Stephen? At the moment, the demand is right down. So we're sitting at 28 gigs, right? So we're kind of lucky there. And of course, Eskom Generation added up their performance. So we've got also new units on the grid from Medupi and Kusile. But we must not forget, the Achilles heel from a diesel cost is that we are pushing the OCGTs to the hilt in terms of peaking times. Now, that's fine. We can reasonably match the supply and demand in a case of low demand. But when we get into winter, as I said, with another 5 gigs that we need to cater for, you can't really push these OCGTs to the hilt because they're not built for that. I mean, at the moment, they're sitting with a load factor of 7%. That's reasonably fine, but you can't push them beyond that. And bear in mind, for the last 2 years, we've been driving these OCGTs to the hilt. So my fear is that hopefully, and I'm talking as a person that worked in generation as an experienced engineer, that these OCGTs do not collapse. If they collapse now and break down, then we'll get back to higher levels of load shedding. So what I'm saying, Stephen, fine, it's commendable that we've got no load shedding now, but we will just prepare that we could go to higher stages in winter, but maybe as an NRS and give the public this comfort that we'll not get into a total grid collapse or a blackout situation, because as an NRS, as you know, in collaboration with NERSA, we came up with an excellent tool or code of practice where through significant scenario planning, etc., we mitigated all possible risks of a total blackout and grid collapse, even going beyond stage 8. So by using scenario planning, we will consider the worst case scenario of stage 16, but we will not get to stage 16.
Okay.
Stephen.
Everyone, there are various transitions that we're involved in, and we're moving from a situation where we had one electricity utility, one sole generator really, that relies on coal. And now we're going to have more people producing more power in different ways. I'm presuming that means that the grid or the network is going to be harder to manage than it was in the past as a result of that.
Well, I won't say it's harder. It will get a bit more complex, but these are not new initiatives and so on. These are done globally. And so it will get a bit more complex because we will have what we call in technical terms more distributed energy resources on the distribution side. Bearing in mind, Stephen, for centuries we had a waterfall generation. In other words, centralized generation where you move from centralized generation, one-way flow of electrons to the end-use customer no choices. Now with the advance of technologies and digitization, we have two-way flows of electrons. Customers have more choices. We have more digitization, artificial intelligence. So that, although it could assist the human element, it also makes it complex. But at the end of the day, maybe, Stephen, maybe just a strategic viewpoint, going forward, I'm of the opinion that the utilities, Eskom, and the municipalities will continue to own the national grid. So they'll be the grid owners. The private sector, in a very prudent manner, through IPPs and residential, commercial, etc., will play a significant role in the generation of electrons because utilities, Eskom, Munich, don't have the balance sheet, don't have the income statement. You alluded to that. So the private sector will play a role. It has to be a prudent, fit-for-purpose, collaborative approach between the private sector and utilities. Utilities must have the space. Eskom cannot be allowed to fail, although I think, in my opinion, certain people would like to see that happening. But South Africa, unlike the West and first world countries, we have 5% middle class and rich people, 95% poor people. You need government, good performing governments, which haven't been performing well now, to take the lead in ensuring that the poor people are not left behind. Stephen.
Vali Paliachi, thank you very much indeed. Chair of the Management Committee of the NRS Association, former senior executive at Eskom and at City Power. In a moment, Mohammed Madis, the energy expert and CEO at Sinan Energy. How has the grid changed over the last year? 11 minutes now to 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Looks like an issue in Joburg on the N3 running north up around London Road. If you're on your way from Edenvale through towards Limbro Park area, all of a sudden that traffic just starting to grind to a halt pretty quickly. The N3 going north, exiting Edenvale. The N14, the Krugersdorp Highway, the crash at the N1 Brakfontein interchange still there. It's a big queue coming up from the R55 Pretoria West exit. If you're on your way into Pretoria, that is the direction affected. And the R21 onto the R24 out by the airport. There's some slow traffic. That is a collision scene. So it's a multi-vehicle pile-up. R24 effectively before Barber Road, but that's having an impact as you exit the R21 south onto the Albertina Cecilio Highway. No real change across in Durban. The N2 remains this morning's heaviest highway around the country. It's a fatal pedestrian collision halfway between Spaghetti Junction and the M7. The N2 remains under real pressure right back as far as in Under Road. It looks like just a single lane to filter past that scene. The N2 south should really be avoided, as should the N3 inbound, standing from the M13 Paradise Valley all the way into and just a little bit beyond Spaghetti Junction this morning. Avoiding that, the M13 through Westfield and across the restricted N2 bridge down to Sherwood remains very heavy. If you want to get off the N3 simply through Spaghetti Junction for the N2 south, avoid all of that by exiting the N3 at the M7, run down through Queensrep, North D, North Park. It's clear for connections through to the Bluff or onto the N2. Cape Town side, a lot of pressure on the N2 inbound towards Hospital Bend. It's bad enough to be causing quite a backlog on the N2 south from Maitland, trying to get off the M5 and into the N2, and northbound from Rondebosch staying heavy as well. Routes like Lisbig Parkway up towards the N2, and then Klipfontein Road passing Rondebosch Common in towards Lisbig Parkway is a heavy queue as well. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Character will be tested between the great giants of the beautiful game. RB Leipzig and Borussia Dortmund understand that the first prize is unreachable. However, they want to finish as high as possible. This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be. Catch RB Leipzig versus Borussia Dortmund on Saturday, 27 April at 3 p.m. Live on SABC3. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. # We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Mama Kitty, I heard Rand Water talking on the radio about how dangerous it is for people to encroach on their pipeline servitude.
Yes, those high-pressure Rand Water pipelines are under the ground distributing megaliters of water. When people build on top of the pipeline, Rand Water is unable to conduct maintenance on the pipeline, which has a negative impact on water provision. Pipelines can burst without warning. People could get seriously injured or worse.
Yes, people can die from a bursting pipe. That is why people need to understand that Rand Water servitude is where a Rand Water pipeline is located. If we build our houses or businesses on a Rand Water servitude, then we are encroaching on that servitude. They say if communities want to know whether they've encroached over servitudes, they should look for the Rand Water beacons.
The beacons indicate the presence of Rand Water pipelines under the ground. They're rectangular, made of concrete, are painted either white or blue, and have the Rand Water logo on them.
Let's take a walk around our area to see if there are any Rand Water beacons so that we can also tell the neighbors.
Rand Water, celebrating 120 years of existence and still finding new ways to provide clean, portable bulk water.
Weekday nights on S3 are about to get lit. BBC Primetime will give you access to a hand-picked selection of BBC Studios' award-winning dramas, documentaries and factual entertainment, with titles such as Luther, Critical Cheaters, Top Gear, Live at the Apollo, Louis Theroux, Forbidden America, and more. You simply don't want to miss out. Tune in to S3 from the 1st of May from 9 p.m. until 11 p.m. to channel the best of British entertainment with BBC Primetime, only on S3. Open up.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
Continue your mediated conversation this morning around how our grid has changed over the last year after 28 days of no load shedding. Mohammed Mahdi is an energy expert and CEO at Sinan Energy. Mohammed, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen.
For the moment, our coal-fired power stations are still really the backbone of our grid. In the past, we've seen some catastrophic failures, sometimes at some of the newer units. Is it still possible to have more failures like that in the future? I mean, could we be pitched back into load shedding actually at any moment quite quickly if we have 2 or 3 big failures?
Look, unfortunately, that is true because we have an aging generation fleet and the average age of our power plants is over 34 years. So they're very close to end of life and some of them are past the end of life. So we could have an outage at any point. However, the likelihood of having that has reduced because of some of the work that has been done. And I think we need to commend that work. But at the same time, what we should also do now is take this as the new benchmark. So, we shouldn't just assume this is a lull. We're told not to assume this is a lull. So we should take it as a benchmark. And if this is the benchmark for now, then we need to hold people accountable to this benchmark going forward. And, a steady improvement from this point on.
In other words, we mustn't go backwards from here.
Absolutely. So, we've been told there's going to be an improvement in the grid. So every time there is an improvement, I think instead of calling it a lull, which it actually is, but instead of calling it the lull and expecting to go back to where we were, hold all those that are accountable and that are responsible to this level of performance at the very least and improvement. And if it drops, then those that are responsible need to, consequently face the heat of why it's dropped and face the consequences.
Mohammed, it seems to me, I'm not an expert on energy, but, as a journalist, it seems to me at some point there is likely to be a huge fight over who should get the credit for the fact that we haven't had load shedding for 4 weeks, right? And I could see several arguments. Some people are going to say it's a result of the work that was done 5 or 6 years ago from sort of 2018 onwards. Some people are going to say maybe it was the work of Andre de Ruyter and his team, and some are going to say it was the work of the team that came after that. You can imagine why I think there might be a fight around this. Is it possible to actually say who can claim the credit for this, or is it really more of a sort of accumulation of work in the right direction?
So I think I would rephrase the question completely. I don't think anyone should be claiming credit. At most, what we should say is who has failed the least. So no one should be claiming credit for what's happened. We have been in an extremely unprecedented situation over the last 2 years. Very unpleasant situation, of course, for the off-takers. And to get out of that morass and see a little bit of light, no pun intended, and anyone wanting to take credit for that is just inappropriate. We are still in a situation of what I call failed performance. We are very far from the stable grid. To put this in perspective, we are not at the levels that we had in 2012. The level of reserve capacity, the level of operation and performance that we had in 2012, we don't have that now, despite so much additional renewable energy coming on stream from the private sector. So the generation fleet overall is very far from being healthy. The last thing we should be talking about is anyone taking credit. I think what the media and what all stakeholders should be demanding that we get to an acceptable and respectable level of performance. And that's going to mean that we need to add 10 to 13,000 megawatts to the grid. This is the number we really have to keep in mind. Only when we've added that amount of generation capacity to the grid from whatever source can we say that we would be in a reasonably stable situation. So I have to agree with Valley earlier. where he said the open cycle gas turbines are running to the full hilt, and so that is part of what's happening at the moment. So these are the factors we need to take into account. But the benchmark, the norm, and what everyone needs to be aiming at is getting to a normal, stable grid. Not taking credit for, getting a little bit out of the morass that we're in.
Okay, so there's a lot more work still to do. Where do we need to focus that work? I know part of it will be administration, part of it is sort of continuing the breakup of Eskom into 3 parts. Part of it is simply making sure there's more generating capacity. In other words, making sure the units, I presume, the easiest would be to make sure that the new units that we have, Kusile and Medupi, are working properly.
So I think we have to make sure that the new units and the newer power stations are working properly, absolutely. But the focus must not only be on Eskom. I mean, just think about it. We've got over 5,000 megawatts from the private sector. We've been saying this all along. That's more than 12% of the national capacity that we need. And so we need to accelerate that trend. And, the first speaker said that is not always available. Well, I think what is missed here is that the trend that makes this more available is the increasing uptake of battery energy storage. And battery energy storage allows for that backup, for that secondary backup. And so you don't always have to fall back to Eskom when the sun is not shining. You now have battery energy storage, which gets you through quite a big portion of the time. The other point to note is that even though there may be no load shedding, there is going to be continued accelerated investment in private sector power. And the reason for this is that private sector power is a lot cheaper than Eskom power. And that is why we're seeing 5,000 megawatts plus of power being added, by the private sector, because it is considerably cheaper than Eskom. Eskom faces a situation where they have a shrinking revenue base and an expanding cost base. So they will never be able to compete with decentralized power. And then the last point to note, even when I was at Eskom, we were always talking, and I was in fact responsible for electrifying very large parts of the country. We're always talking about making sure that the 95% that Veli talks about are not left underserved. The unfortunate truth is that Eskom cannot serve that 95% in the most efficient or most economic way. The renewable energy, especially the new technologies, are a much cheaper way to serve that underserved community. And this is what's happening in other parts of the developing world. You'll find shanty towns with solar panels.
Mohammed Mahdi.
So these are the things.
I'm so sorry. We're going to have to leave it there. Mohammed Mahdi's energy expert, CEO at Sinan Energy. Vali Padiachi is chair of the management committee of the NRS Association. Jose Maleshe is an energy expert, and particularly on the funding. You were there, SAFM, leading the conversation a little after 9 o'clock.
In our top stories, equal education heads to court over unplaced Western Cape learners, and US approves multi-billion-dollar bill that includes aid to Ukraine. Good morning. Equal Education and its Law Centre have filed papers to the High Court in Cape Town to order the Western Cape Education Department fine schools for unplaced learners. Attorney at the centre, Yolisa Piliso, says they've been flooded with queries from parents seeking support for the placement of their children, particularly in the Metro East Education District. She says it's worrisome that many learners are still at home in the second week of the second school term. Piliso says many parents cannot access the department's registration methods due to socio-economic circumstances and unforeseen matters. They are still waiting for a court date for the matter to be heard. The investigating officer in the Senzo Mehiwa case, Sergeant Batu Mogola, is expected back on the stand at the High Court in Pretoria this morning. 5 men are on trial for the murder of the Bafana Bafana captain. Yesterday, Mogola was asked why a warrant of arrest had not been issued to singer Kelly Khumalo. Khumalo is the former girlfriend of the slain soccer captain who was murdered in 2014. Mehiwa was at her parental home in Vosloorus when he was shot dead. Paul Magubane reports.
Kelly Khumalo's name has come up in 2 confession statements allegedly made by accused 1, Moses Sibiya, and 2, Bongani Ntanzi. While the two statements mention different names of those allegedly involved in the murder, they both point to Khumalo as the one who ordered the killing. Defense counsel Zandile Mshololo questioned Mogola about a draft application for a warrant of arrest for Khumalo. The draft application is said to be in the docket before the court. Defense counsel Charles Mnesi for accused 3 is expected to cross-examine Mogola when the trial resumes this morning.
The KwaZulu-Natal government has dismissed reports it has fired King Misizulu Kazwelethini's praise singer Pusicheni Mdletshe. This after the King issued a statement raising his discontent with the ANC-led provincial government, accusing them of disrespecting the Zulu monarch. But the provincial government says Mdletche's extended 2-year contract expired in 2022, following his retirement in 2020. The KZN provincial government spokesperson Bongi Gwala says there's already a new praise singer appointed to take over from Mdletshe after his contract ended.
There are 2 praise singers that were trained and mentored by Mr. Mdletshe, Mr. Mkhize and Mr. Mjali. And today, Mr. Mkhize is employed as a praise singer in His Majesty's portfolio. So it would then be not prudent for the provincial government to have 2 praise singers who are paid by government from the same budget. So that is where the issue is.
In election news, the leader of the referendum party, Phil Craig, has called for a referendum on Cape independence. The party launched its election manifesto in the Western Cape. Craig says South Africa is a failed state.
And allow us to build this first world country at South Africa's southern tip. And ultimately, it'll do that by allowing them democracy, allowing them a situation where they can elect their own government and vote in a better government than voters in the voters in the rest of South Africa have historically done and will continue to do undoubtedly after these elections.
And finally, the U.S. Senate has approved a $95 billion aid package for Ukraine, Israel and Taiwan. The overwhelming vote in favor marks the end of 6 months of deadlock in Congress. It follows the package approval by the House of Representatives on Saturday. The Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said Washington had shown its allies it would not turn its back on them.
To our friends in Ukraine, to our friends in Israel, to our friends in the Indo-Pacific, and to innocent civilians caught in the midst of a war from Gaza to Sudan, America hears you. We will be there for you. And to the whole world, rest assured, America will never shrink from its responsibilities as a leader on the world stage.
Recapping the top story, Equal Education and its Law Centre have filed papers to the High Court in Cape Town to order the Western Cape Education Department to fine schools for unplaced learners. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, leading the conversation.
And we would buy 500 cars and we would buy 500 more. So sell your car for the best price and we won't think about it twice. We buy cars, we buy cars. We buy cars, we buy cars.
We buy cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
The Northwest Legislature's Portfolio Committee on Economic Development, Environment, Tourism, Agriculture and Rural Development will embark on public hearings throughout the province on the Plant Health Phytosanitary Bill B14B21 on 25 April 2024 at Ngakamudiri Mulema District in Motswedi Community Hall in Motswedi, at Dr. Kenneth Kaunda District in Agricultural College in Potchefstroom, at Dr. Ruth Somoti Mompati in Tosca Community Hall in Tosca, at Bojanala District in Safer Scale Community Hall in Safer Scale. All hearings start at 10.
The Talking Point with Kathy Motlatlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
The South African government had to clean the region,
cleanse it of any possibility that the ANC could use these countries to conduct the struggle. There was somebody that was sent from here who was a New Zealander. He must have been some kind of mercenary who was sent, for instance, to assassinate me in Lusaka. I mean, it was a matter that we lived with wherever we were, because it was not in Botswana, in Lesotho, in Swaziland. It was killing of our people. It was not just attacks on us, but also attacks on these states that were friendly to us.
I became active in the struggle in 1953. At that time, repression began to increase to a point that was reached in 1960 after Sharpeville, that it appeared that non-violent means on their own would not suffice.
On the night of Sharpeville, which was March 21st, Walter Sisulu, the Secretary General of the ANC, asked me to leave the country immediately, because prior to that, I had been asked if I would assist Oliver Tambo to go out of the country. So I went on to Salisbury, as it then was, and tried to arrange for the exit of Oliver Tambo to Tanzania, which was the nearest country.
I knew I had to leave the country. There was no way I could continue to stay in the country and not be arrested. You don't know where you're going. I was given just a bit of pocket money. You know, I had just a small little bag. Clearly, as a student, I, of course, put in a few books so that if I'm asked, I'll say, well, you know, I'm a student, I'm doing this and that.
They just came to tell me that you are leaving the country. I said, no, I can't. I have 3 children. They said, so what? What about these other people who have been killed? How many children did they have? Got such a shock. I told him, no, that's not fair. There are other people who have children too, but they are men. I'm a woman. He says, all the reason why you should go. We need people and we need you. I said, all right, I'll see what I can do, but I don't know what I'll say to my mother because I've got to leave the children with her. And I told her that, the organization is sending me to school. So she agreed to remain. How long are you going away? I said, for a year. I left. I was away for 27 years.
We walked as school kids. We must have been between 10 and 15. We walked on foot from Mafikeng one night and crossed into Botswana. The patrols along the borders spotted us and they started shooting. When we were already on the Botswana side, there was this nice altercation between the Botswana, Maponesa and the South African ones, with the South Africans saying, hand them over, they are terrorists. And Botswana looking at us and saying, no, these are kids.
Listening to The Talking Point. Welcome to the show, 12 after 9 o'clock. I'm Kathy Mohlahlana. I'm with you until midday. You heard there some of the voices of exilees of the anti-apartheid movement. Each of them, I think, shortly, just briefly, touching and reflecting on their journeys. You heard the voices of Thabo Mbeki, Thandi Modise, Mac Maharaj, Frene Ginwala, Max Sisulu, and Ruth Mompati. Welcome to the show. We're with you until midday. As always, we'll kick off the conversation on the open line. I'll be taking your calls. It is your national roundtable on 086 000 2032. That's the number to dial, 086 000 2032. On the WhatsApp line, you can send through those WhatsApp voice notes and messages on 0614 104 107. Here's what's coming up on the show. So, like I said, we'll kick it off with the open line as we always do. And in the second hour of the show for Citizens Corner today, remember that we've had to tweak things up a bit to also try and ensure that we speak to as many of the political parties, independent candidates that are going to be contesting this year's election. So today we're joined by the economic freedom fighters. They'll be a part of the conversation that we have in the second hour of the show. And then the final hour of the show, we're in conversation with the Minister of the Department of Water and Sanitation, that's Senzo Mchunu. It, of course, follows on how we opened the show yesterday, really, which was reflecting on the Giyani water crisis. You would have heard in news that residents of Giyani were still complaining about the fact that the reticulation of water had not been switched on, and of course it was contrary to a commitment that was made by the minister last year, who said that by December he had anticipated that the reticulation would have been switched on. So he'll join us today to give us an update, and I think by and large respond then to what residents are saying about what is unfolding in that part of the country. So that's what you can expect coming up on the Talking Point within the next 3 hours. As always, I'll be taking your calls. 086 000 2032 is the number to dial. What's on your mind on the WhatsApp voice note line? 0614 104 107. We'll take your calls after this.
#SAFM Talking Point.
For years, Outsurance has been saying they'll save you money on your car insurance, or you can ask for 500 Rand or 1,500 Rand cash if they don't. Here's Fundi, 46 from Brackenfell.
I was not happy with what I was paying. I heard about the 500 Rand from Outsurance, but they give me lesser amount for my car. I'm paying 523 Rand on my 2013 Hyundai iX35.
So here's how it works. SMS out to 30754. We'll give you a no-obligation car insurance quote. If the quote is less than you're currently paying, you'll end up saving money on your car insurance every month. And if it's more than you're currently paying, you can ask for 500 Rand. And if you've been with the same insurer and claim free for 3 years or more, tell us you want 1,500 Rand.
Give Outsurance a call. It's a win-win. You can't lose.
SMS out to 30754 now. That's out to 30754. Outsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's, and limits apply. Premiums are risk profile dependent and reviewed annually. Client comments do not constitute financial advice.
Hello, Your Choice Hotline. Hi, I need you to help me make a choice.
Well, with Ford, you get to make your own choices. Like on a new Ford Ranger, Ford Puma, Ford Everest, and the Ford Tornado bus. There's a flexible deal for every budget at your nearest Ford dealership today. Limited time offer. Your Ford, your choice. T&Cs apply.
The Northwest Legislature's Portfolio Committee on Economic Development, Environment, Tourism, Agriculture and Rural Development will embark on public hearings throughout the province on the Electricity Regulation Bill B23B23 on 24 April 2024 at Ngakan Mudirimulema District in Madibugo Community Hall in Madibugo, at Dr. Kenneth Kaunda District in Matlosani Auditorium Hall, at Dr. Ruth Somuti Mompati in Utlwanang Community Hall in Christiana, at Bojanala District in Letabile Community Hall in Letabile. All hearings start at 10.
The South African Sports Awards recognizes and honors the best in sport on and off the field, celebrating 30 years of freedom through sporting excellence. Select your favorite People's Choice nominee: A. Ibn Etzebeth, B. Gerda Steyn, C. Siya Kolisi, D. Percy Tau, or E. Kirsten Neschaffer. SMS A, B, C, D, or E to 32020. SMSs cost R1.50. T's and C's apply. You can also visit the dsac.gov.za website. Catch the 17th edition of the South African Sport Awards on Sunday, the 5th of May at 8 p.m. live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC 1.
The Talking Point with Kathy Motlatlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
All right, let's kick it off this morning on the open line in the Eastern Cape. Olani, good morning.
Hi, Kathy. Good morning to you.
Yes.
I thought I had to provoke someone that I saw in the mirror this morning. and hoping that everyone else who looked into the mirror will also be provoked about voting. I left no stones unturned when I was doing this. But for the last 30 years, and we've been voting, the question is, how responsible are we on what we are voting for? No longer just about the right to vote, but how responsible are we as voters when we are voting? Because we continue to blame, other people. We forget sometimes to go and stand in front of the mirror and actually check in terms of why I voted the way I voted, and has everything that I wanted happened in the last 30 years if I was fortunate enough to vote for the number of times we voted since 1994. If not, then why am I continuing doing what I'm doing and still continue to complain the way I'm complaining? I thought, let me just leave that.
In what ways, Xolani, do you think people should exercise the responsibility? So what would show that one is actually being responsible with their vote?
If we were to use an example, Kathy, is that I vote for a purpose. The purpose is that there should be development in the environment where I am. And then if I do so, then what does that mean? It means I need to make those that I'm voting for accountable. And if not, why am I still continuing doing the same thing over and over again and still continue to complain? So the issue that I'm putting to us out there as voters this year is for us to introspect. Are we getting value for the vote that we are doing? If not, then why are we continuing doing the same thing and still continue to complain?
All right. Okay. It's an interesting one, Xolani, because also on the one hand, right, you could well find that perhaps there are ideas and policy positions that people really believe in, and even though they've been disappointed, they keep being hopeful about the fact that things will change.
30 years later, Kathy, and you're still hoping for change on the same thing. I'm not specific to a particular political party this
Fair
time.
enough.
I'm just focusing on the environment that one lives at. If your environment, you are not seeing development around it, and you are all complaining, and you even go and block roads year on year, and you still continue to vote the way you are voting, then you need to stand in front of the mirror like I did this morning and actually introspect and ask yourself a couple of questions.
Okay.
You might find that the real stone that needed to be unturned or turned was just in front of you.
So what is the stone that turned for you, Xolani, before I let you go?
Okay, the issue was that we need to know why we are voting. And if we know why we are voting, are we on the same page in the environment that we are in, or we are just doing it for the sake of pleasing individuals?
Okay, all right. Okay, Xolani, thanks for that.
Like I said to you, I'm just provoking voters.
All right, okay. Xolani out in the Eastern Cape. Why do you vote? What are you hoping to get out of it? What drives that intention to vote? Is it for development? Is it just to repeat what you did the previous cycle of election? That is Xolani's question. JP, you're in Kempton Park. Good morning.
Good morning, Kathy, and thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I'm calling to respond to one of the callers yesterday with regard to the vendors that must get permit when they are selling.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking from experience that at times some of them, they don't want to comply to the law. Sometimes being asked to say go and apply, so that when the government even want to assist you, they know who you are, everything. But at times find that they are being reluctant. For example, I once been a teacher where you find that now there were people who were selling food. They went to go and take food on a dumping site and sell at the school. And they were spoken with them to say, don't do that. It happened. You find that when children are sick, sometimes we support people to say, no, they are making a living. while they're making a living from that now, when certain thing goes wrong, now who are you going to identify who have done this? At times, you find people are selling at a dirty place. Sometimes at the place where they're selling, they're not clean. So when the municipality say want that, they want order. So at times, when the government try to put order, we don't want to comply. Sometimes we support. At the same time, it is important that because at times when they do apply, they have permit. Yes, I'm saying they have permit. You know who's selling there and what are they selling. So at times we become unfair when we want to say no, lawlessness, everything can do. Sometimes find that now in certain places where they're selling, they're letting the place littering. Littering, they don't clean everything. But if you find that, you know that it is easy, you know who have registered, then you're able to go to them. So for me, at times I think that now we sometimes become unfair when we want to just say no, we should not control. Control must be there, but at the same time, we're going to look at the circumstances.
Yeah, JP, I don't think anybody's saying that there must be no control. I don't think that, there's a sense that people must not get permits to trade as is required by a lot of the bylaws in municipalities. I think that the big question is really how these bylaws are implemented.
Yes, but I'm saying that now at times where I once been at a situation where I find that they're being called people to say you want to sell this and this. You are required to do 1, 2, 3. You give them 3 months, 6 months, you find that people that don't do that. And at the end of the day, as I'm saying that, in particular at school level, where I say I once been, when people end up selling expired food, everything, now you, at that point in time find that now the school or that institution end up have to account who do you know all the people who are selling food for the children.
So basically you're saying that there's, sometimes a lack of will from the informal traders themselves to comply with the regulations.
Indeed.
Okay.
Indeed, because when people are willing to take them to say, comply, you have the license because, for example, there was a time where I found that the government said, if you comply, even if we say that, no, we want to help you as informal trader, we're going to put you in a database. When you put in a database in the particular area, we want to have a project. We are going to put you, but if you never registered, we want to know, the government can know who to assist, who are you, what are you, everything, all this particular thing. So for me, I think that now we need also to be considerate that now the government play its part yourself to say no because you are because saying that no I'm poor, I want to do things, but yes, but don't take wrong things at the end of the day because in schools, what is happening is people who are selling in schools.
Are you in the sector at all, JP?
I once been in that sector, and we dealt with a lot of such people selling wrong. Because even at schools saying that now, there are certain food where you were saying that the school says you cannot sell this type of food are not needed to be sold at children, for example.
Okay, all right. Okay, JP, thanks for that contribution. JP out in Kempton Park. Daniel, you're in Kuruman. Good morning.
Morning, Kathy. How are you?
I'm well, thank you, Daniel.
I'm fine, thank you. Kathy, I need to talk about what is happening there at Phosphorus Hospital. Kathy, I'm staying nearby that hospital. Last week, Sunday, I was just being attacked with something else. I was supposed to be taken there to hospital late. It was around past 10 to 11. You know what happened there, Kathy? Sometimes we can blame the government that the government is not doing well, but the problem is our people. Last year, I came here and explained that, I was that on hospital for the whole night spending, not even one doctor which was there. I even report here on SAFM that please contact the person who's in charge with the health department to go and find out, because the doctor which they are working there is the black people like us. They just go there and write their name and go and sleep at home for the sake of on the following day they must just monitor their own surgeries. So what happened last week Sunday is that, Kathy, I go there. It was not, they were, I think it was a load shedding or whatever, I don't know. I go there. So I was so sick. When I arrived, they said I must start with a clinic. If you enter under Foslorus Hospital, there is a clinic on your left-hand side. I go there. When I go there, the other doctor, which I saw, he was just sleeping on that bed which they are using on the ambulance. Other sister, which is supposed to write for if you enter, you use to pull your card or whatever. They were just sitting. I asked some help. They said to me they can't do anything. They can't help me because there is no light. You know, it was so painful because the other people, they were just sitting as well there. So I don't know if you can contact maybe anyone to go and check that hospital, what's going on that hospital, Foslorus. Because always you have got some issues, especially when you go there at late. I don't know who am I supposed to contact.
So Daniel, in the end, what happened? Did they end up helping you, or did you just leave?
They end up taking me to. We end up calling a private doctor. They gave me some medication because I was so sick on that time. But I don't know because there were other people which they were just seated there at a hospital. They didn't even get help. I don't know either they left to get help when the electricity comes back because the doctor was just sleeping. Which you can even see that the doctor is here, but they say to me they can't help me.
And the hospital doesn't have backup power.
Really, they were just putting the light with those lights which they are selling, which they've been charged.
Yes, the LED lights, yeah.
Yes, they were just using that light, and then they just tell me that they can't do anything.
Yeah, Daniel. Yeah, okay. All right.
It was so painful. That is why I'm saying sometimes we can blame the government when things are wrong they were doing with our own people. Look like what is happening at Home Affairs. Go there at Home Affairs of Jamestown. Every day you will find the queue.
Yeah.
You will ask yourself, what's going on? Is it the government? It's our people.
All right.
It's our people, really.
Okay, Daniel. Thanks for calling in and for raising that issue with us. And yeah, I guess most concerning is the fact that you left the hospital without being assisted by anyone at all and had to go for help elsewhere. Then what is the point of having hospitals in the first place? All right, we're going to go to the latest news headlines. I'm back with more of your calls and your WhatsApp voice notes.
Good morning, I'm Anne Musa. In the headlines, the Trade, Industry and Competition Minister Ibrahim Patel says the employee shared ownership programs has seen a significant increase in the number of jobs the schemes have contributed to the economy. Equal Education and its law centre have filed papers to the High Court in Cape Town to order the Western Cape Education Department to fine schools for unplaced learners. And delegates from around the world are meeting in Canada for a fourth round of talks aimed at reaching a binding global agreement to end plastic pollution. I'll have details on these and other stories at 10.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
Oh, Kathy, oh my goodness. I don't know if it's the full moon, but that intro got me so emotional this morning. The song, I don't know why. I've heard struggle songs before. I love Ingoma Zomzabalazo, but oh, by the way, I'm only 36 years old. But it just moved me to tears this morning. Thank you for sharing. My name is Mpumi.
Oh, Katie. Yeah. You know, I just came emotional, Kathy, with your opening clip there. In my mind, I'm just thinking, Kathy, if you listen to those clips, especially when they sing, Kathy, you get these goosebumps and you get emotional and you try to think this government we have now and the previous people who fight for this country, Kathy, if they could remind themselves and listen to this, one would weep, one would cry and repent and just apologize and accept all the wrong things they are doing, the corruption they are doing, Kathy. I'm so touched. My tears is so dropping, Kathy. I'm so emotional. I'm sorry, but it is what it is. But bless their sorrows. I'm just happy for the freedom we have today, for all those freedom fighters they did for us. Thank you so much, Kathy. Oh, thank you, Kathy.
Katrina, good morning. How are you? It's Kosnati speaking here. You see, it's very sad to hear what was happening during the apartheid era. But what I'm asking myself is that in our days, these ministers and presidents, whoever is occupying the high office in the land, are they care about what was happening by that time? Are they even go back and listen to what was happening? Because those people are working for themselves. They are working for their stomach. Right now, we hear each and every corner, each and every minister is telling us what is going to do just because the election is around the corner. Where were them all this time? What they were doing? They were waiting for this time. Just because now is one month to go to the election, now they are telling us, even Tulas Nglesi, the ever quiet minister who never gave us anything, but now is telling us about how many jobs is going to create. That is nonsensical and it's false.
All right, yeah, thank you for those WhatsApp voice notes. You know, you're right. Those opening clips, especially for this month, given the theme that we decided to stick with, you know, have been quite emotionally provocative, because it is quite something to revisit history in that way. And even though you may not necessarily, have been an adult at the time, but the kind of emotion that it invokes, because you hear the sincerity and the depth of contribution that these individuals gave, just so that they could help to fight for freedom in this country. So, I completely understand for our listeners that are moved so much. It happens to me every time, every single time. Let me go to Cape Town. Lubabalo, good morning.
Hi, good morning, Sister. How are you?
I'm well, thank you, Lubabalo.
Yes. I would like to speak. In fact, I want to say this. We as a country, Sis Kathy, we need to conduct a case study on the failures of the Eastern Cape government, which is under the ANC. As we enter these elections, we have to be very responsible, and maybe we have to say, since the Eastern Cape is a large province, the next elected government should focus on agriculture 100%. Because currently it seems like the province is being neglected, struggling to reach its full potential. We can't be comfortable with 80% of the youth in the Eastern Cape leaving the province because of lack of service delivery, infrastructure development. You know, I think that the province has huge potential, and this government is not tapping into that potential.
You know, Lubabalo, the Eastern Cape is really one of the provinces whose stories I think is absolutely heartbreaking, because while, you can talk about, let's say, what is happening in your urban centers. So regardless of whether or not people feel that there are services in Gauteng, in KZN, in the urban centers, those have seen just such phenomenal growth over the years. And it's part of why Gauteng, KZN and the Western Cape are